are still going to be on the high side, just about getting into the low 30s across the south. Fresher than this, though, further north, similar to today, high teens, low 20s, so feeling warm enough in any sunshine. Into Thursday, and the heavy thunderstorms are going to be a bit more widespread. Across much of England and Wales, there is the risk of some thundery downpours. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, a few showers are possible, and it is going to be a little bit cloudy at times. Friday's looking like it will be a bit drier for many before something fresher and wetter by the weekend. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Clashes with protesters and police last night in Southport following the fatal stabbings of those 3 children at a dance class.
The Prime Minister has said anybody involved in last night's riots will feel the full force of the law.
Bottles and bricks were thrown, a police van set alight, nearly 40 officers injured in what was totally violent disorder.
The families of the victims expressed their devastation as BB King, age 6, Elsie Stancombe, age 7, and Alice Aguirre, age 9, are named as those girls who've been murdered.
Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Iran's capital, Tehran. It's been confirmed.
Hugh Edwards in court. The former BBC presenter is due at Westminster Magistrates Court today, charged with making 37 indecent images of children.
Farming crisis. The new government has been accused of ignoring rural communities because they failed to get a mention in the King's speech.
Eco-protesters Just Stop Oil targets holidaymakers at Heathrow and Gatwick Airport. We asked this morning, should we scrap summer holidays abroad to cut emissions?
A sizzling summer. Well, for a couple of days anyway. There are yellow heat health warnings in place right across the UK. And this is reckoned to be the hottest day of the year.
As the hot weather persists, there's a risk of thunderstorms for some of us this afternoon. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
The time 1 minute past 6 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed for your company from now until 9:30. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
When we look today, and we'll go into detail on this, but every newspaper, and rightly so, the pictures of those 3 little angels that we're going to talk about so much, and the reaction there has been to their murders. It's not their deaths, it's their murders. The Prime Minister has warned rioters in Southport that they will feel the full force of the law because there was disruption there last night, and a lot of rioters hijacked the vigil last night for the victims of these stabbings.
Well, hundreds of people came out to show their support for the 3 children who were killed in Monday's attack. They've been named now as 7-year-old Elsie Stancombe, Alice De Silva Aguirre, who's 9 years old, and 6-year-old BB King. They were all fatally stabbed at that Taylor Swift-themed dance class on Monday.
22 police officers last night. Now, look at these are the scenes outside a mosque last night. These were the 22 people injured at the scene. 8 sustaining serious injuries, fractures, lacerations, a suspected broken nose, and concussion amongst the injuries.
Well, we're joined now by former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley. Good to see you this morning, Peter. What a horrible set of circumstances, absolutely horrific. What's your response to what we've seen in Southport?
Yes, it was horrific, but it's so depressingly predictable and therefore avoidable. The communication from Merseyside Police, from the Chief Constable, who goes on television and says, I'm a mother, I'm a nana, please understand, I feel your pain, just doesn't butter any parsnips. It really doesn't. The communication has been appalling. The reach out to the community has failed. And because the police are so distant from the public these days, this kind of event doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Anybody could have seen it coming.
See, but why does it come, Peter? Here is the point. This is sorrow beyond belief that we're dealing with here. The police as first responders were there doing their bit on Monday for all of this. And these people are heroes, and these people we rely on. So why am I looking at this? Why am I looking at these scenes? Why did the police become the villains in all of this?
And you've called it out this morning, Eamonn, and I thank you for that. These young girls were murdered, and police officers heroically went to the scene and tried to save lives and arrested the man. But the bigger picture is that in this day and age, with identikit senior police officers who are very learned because they've been to university and they've got letters after their name and they can write you a dissertation on reflective practice, but they do not know what the people feel, how it is to engage with people, what it's like on the streets, and therefore the connection and the communication is frankly non-existent.
Do you think part of the issue with this, and you can see it, can't you? We had the vigil last night, hundreds of people rightly coming out to pay tribute to these 3 beautiful little girls, a loss of innocent life. And then we saw the violence last night, this riot in Southport. But actually, both groups are doing the same thing, aren't they? They want answers to what happened here. Why were these little girls' lives taken? And perhaps if they had more information from the authorities, they had more information about the attacker, specifically from the police, there wouldn't be quite so much this strength of feeling on the matter.
Thank you very much. But of course, oh no, the law says we cannot release information because this person is not 18 years old. They're a child. Utter
Peter, if I could just stop you there. And I say this about police, I say this about fire people, I say this about people in officialdom, politicians, whatever. Right, just come back to me here. Right, what I think they should do, if I was in charge of their PR, they would say, folks, listen, we cannot give you details and this sort of thing because the law says we're not allowed to. What we can tell you is this. Please understand our situation. We're as frustrated as you are in all of this. People are not idiots. When you treat people like idiots and you use that corporate speak all the time, that's why people get angry.
Eamonn Holmes, you have nailed it completely. If you try to toe the line, do the corporate speak that fails manifestly, that doesn't reach out to the man and the woman in the street, it doesn't look like us, it doesn't sound like us, it's from a script, then of course people are going to get frustrated. People, as you quite rightly say, are not fools. But unfortunately now we have an entire breed of senior police officers, university educated, College of Policing trained, who do not know how to speak to the man and the woman on the street.
And then, Peter, when they don't speak to the man and woman on the street, that leaves a void, and those voids are filled by all sorts of theories. People believe information is being kept from them or they're being lied to.
Absolutely. They think they're having the wool pulled over their eyes. And then the slightest tiny spark of rumour goes around the community like wildfire, and you literally, regrettably, have police vans being set on fire, police officers being injured, and they go from hero a couple of days ago to victims 2 days later. And that is a tragedy. When will senior police officers learn to connect with communities, be like and speak like real people, and stop their frontline officers being cannon fodder?
You use the word communities there, Peter, and I just look at those pictures and I just wonder, there must be a certain amount of that crowd that are not part of the community, that are being shipped in, that are taking advantage or trying to use this for a bigger political cause. What's your view?
But that is nothing new. Police are forever banging on about community relations. There are 2 communities in this country that need to be reached out to by the police and engaged with, but they haven't been for 20, 30 years. The first community is victims of crime. But of course, the police turn their back on people who had their house burgled, their car stolen, their bike stolen, their phone stolen, victims of fraud and all of that. If you turn your back on people like that, who are the everyday, moderate mainstream of Britain, then it is no surprise that they turn their backs on you. The second community they need to engage with is people that carry out crime. But the police haven't done that for over 20 years. They've turned their backs on us the moderate mainstream, and this is what you get.
Peter Blexley, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for analysing that. And we just want to put, what you have had to say out to people watching and listening to see how they're going to respond to that and what they think. Thanks very much, Peter. We have got the police heroes 2 days ago. What's changed there? What's got wrong? What makes people in this country, whether you live in Leeds, whether you live in Southport, what makes anyone think they can attack police officers and burn police vans? My view is when you let it happen once, it then becomes the standard thing. Oh, we'll just petrol bomb a police car here. We'll do this. It's normal. It won't be a proper riot unless we burn something here. Now, the thing is, the only thing that matters here is the families and those 3 poor children who have died and their families, and also just the fact, and whoever perpetrated that, whoever carried it out, and why. That's the only thing we've got to concentrate on. The rest of it is irrelevant. Why are the police now the victims of all of this? Why are we turning our attention and attacking police officers who are not there to make sure that a killer of these 3 children wouldn't be apprehended and wouldn't be charged and wouldn't be sentenced? They're there to make sure that that person is given all those penalties.
Well, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, had this to say about the violence in Southport last night.
Well, in Southport this morning, I saw a community that was coming together to grieve together, to support each other, and also to thank the police for their heroism yesterday in the face of the horrific attack, where there is an urgent criminal investigation now underway. But that's why it's so appalling to now see those same police facing violent attacks from thugs on the streets who have no respect for a grieving community. It's a total disgrace. Frankly, this is a time when everyone should be showing respect for a community and for the police.
Well, we're joined now by The Spectator's political correspondent, James Heal. What did you make of what Yvette Cooper had to say about the violence last night?
Well, she's completely right. I mean, this is a tendency we've seen time and time again, unfortunately, which is that when there is a shocking incident like this, or there's grief, there's sorrow, elements of what we believe to be the far-right move in and sort of parasitic feed off that and try to make it for a political end, and then obviously take a very sort of hurt and grieving community and turn it into one where it's got a scene of violence on the streets. So we've seen this tactic, this playbook, time and time again, and obviously Yvette Cooper is right to call it out, because at the moment that's the last thing this community needs at a time of sorrow and reflection after a very shocking event on Monday with 3 dead.
We need to be starting talking about who is creating the violence here and why they're creating the violence, and if they're locals or not locals. I just don't believe that I'm looking at people who live in that neighbourhood, who are connected to those families and who are hurting the way the families are hurting over this terrible, terrible situation.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on, which is that that's not the normal human reaction here. I think there would be clearly, from what I can tell, evidence to suggest that people have come in from other areas around the local area. The fact that the police had to be called in from, I think, from not just Merseyside, but around the area, even from some from Wales as well to deal with this, would suggest that an incident this size was not definitely local. So I think that people are going to look at who was involved in planning this, what the agenda was going down, and clearly, if you're petrol bombing a mosque in police cars, I mean, clearly this is not going there in a spirit of mourning. And it was a classic thing. After a vigil, there was always going to be some elements of this quite political, and I'm not surprised to see this happening, because we've seen it time and time again.
Away from the anger towards the police last night and the riots that we saw last night, there was political anger and anger towards politicians during the day, and I think that was from people who were genuinely affected by this instance and those 3 girls being killed. People shouting out to the Prime Minister saying, "Our children are dead, why are you leaving us already?" There is so much visceral anger, rightly so, towards politicians, that there's violence towards women and girls and knife crime, that nothing seems to be done.
Yeah, but the thing is, this knife crime, we can't seem to get control of it. How do we get control? I can't sit here and say to you, here's the answer to this. What do we do to control knife crime? What can this government do or say? They can talk strong words, but the actions what on earth do you do?
Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of, first of all, political reaction, severe. Sir Keir Starmer was heckled when he was laying those flowers yesterday at the vigil, and I think that was very much a different thing, an expression of that anger and sorrow and upset. That was obviously clearly someone in the crowd just shouting out, as opposed to someone who goes there with a pre-motivated political agenda. In terms of what Labour can do, I think the debate's going to be around knife crime. Over the past 10 years, knife crime has gone up in England and Wales by 78%, so I think that that's going to be the key thing, given that a knife was believed to be involved in all of this. So I think that that's going to be where the kind of short to medium term in politics goes. Obviously, we await to see what happens in terms of the actual attacker, in terms of things like contempt of court, how that trial goes down. Counter-terrorism police are involved in that, so we'll wait to see what happens there. But I think longer term there'll also be a discussion around social media and the role and the right of all of this, and then we'll wait to see the specifics of the person involved in it.
Obviously,
do you think the Prime Minister was right in going? Does it politicise the thing in any way? I mean, I thought the man was between a rock and a hard place. I think he is showing respect and representing the country there and the grief of the country by being there. Therefore, that was the right thing to do, but maybe people just don't want politicians involved in this.
I think the danger is when a politician comes in and it's a sort of flying visit and they don't seem to actually care. I think Keir Starmer's feelings about this were genuine, they were motivated by good intentions, and I also think that it was right for the Prime Minister to do. You have to go there, you have to feel, you have to share the sense of community and relate that to the rest of the country, because it's not just the local community obviously devastated by this, but I think people across the country are waking up and are shocked by it. So you think he did the right thing. The key thing is about longer term sort of investment in the local area in terms of emotional investment and showing that you share their pain.
I mean, obviously, tackling knife crime is of huge importance to the now Labour government. They're calling it their moral mission, aren't they? But we had that case a few weeks ago where three women were killed by a crossbow. You've got women dying all the time at hands of men. So whether it's done by a hand or a crossbow or by a knife, it's violence towards women and girls that needs to be tackled at the heart of all of this, isn't it?
Hugely, and I know that's an issue of concern to sort of Labour ministers and people like Jess Phillips. I think that's going to be something carried on going forward. It also, longer term, I think, the conversation around social media and kind of what things are being promoted on that will be something they look at. The reality is, I think, is the key thing about having resources and making sure that the police are properly resourced to kind of look into that. So I think knife crime will be the kind of short to medium term debate. I see that way that going, but I think longer term, as you say, Ellie, there's issues around violence to women and girls.
No, this is so disturbing, so wrong to see. But what is also wrong is that successive governments now will say we're going to do something about knife crime, and nothing is done about knife crime. Nothing makes a difference. Now, you either stand up and say we can't do anything about it and be honest about it, or we start doing something about it.
Yeah, I think there's longer-term issues and there's obviously the short-term things you can do. So I think there'll be a debate perhaps around things like stop and search will be something that is potentially brought up maybe by in this Conservative leadership race, for instance, and some politics of that. Longer-term, there's also prevention and making sure communities are reached out to. And obviously just ensuring that proper processes are in place to try and deter this as much as possible, even if it's kind of psychological things like determining for people from going in with these areas and knives.
James, what we need to do is increase penalties until being caught with a knife on the street leads to a jail sentence automatically. Where you're going to have to scare people off that there is a consequence, there is a penalty to carrying a blade. Absolutely right, and I think that that's going to be a key thing in terms of the penal debate about all of this, which is that as Labour does do their justice reforms, I think in the coming weeks that's going to be a key thing, which is automatic sentencing involving knives. And this is the other thing. We have this jail cell shortage, which has been allowed to exist. And I've always said over the years, people, when they look at their taxes and whatever, at the end of the day, they don't object to their money being spent on law and order or jail places. People are happy that there are enough jail places. They're happy to say, oh, I'm going to pay a bit more towards this, because they want criminals taken off the streets.
Absolutely, and I think there's a certain section of the criminal population that you're never going to be able to fix. And so I think you want to be locked up for life, and I think knives is obviously a key part of that, because what kind of man does an attempt like this?
Thank you very much, James. Speak again later. Thank you very much indeed. We want to know what you think throughout the programme today. Have your say. That's what we want you to do. Just get in touch with us that way and let the debate continue online.
Now, farming in the UK has seen a massive drop in income, but Northern Ireland saw a huge reduction from 609 million to 340 million. That's between 2022 and 2023.
Many farmers are now concerned that their ability to survive and invest in the future is over. And serious concerns about Britain's food security have to be addressed. Our reporter Dougie Beattie will be in the studio very shortly, but first of all, here's his report.
We're down now to the average crop farmer income last year was predicted to be 11,500. So that's about 1/5 of the average household income in Northern Ireland. So we're working for double the hours for very, very little income, and that's not sustainable.
Richard Orr is a farmer that is now working for much less than minimum wage and points to imports on certain markets and higher input costs.
Our input costs drastically rose at the same time when crop value rose a couple of years ago, and that has been very slow to come down. Our fertiliser, our energy, our electricity, our fuel. So that knock-on effect of the reduction now in prices for the product we're selling. Last year was a very poor year for crop yield due to the weather, and yet we still have high input costs, probably 50–60% more than what they usually were.
President of the Ulster Farmers Union, William Irvine, has seen many struggling farms and has concerns over food security.
Every business has bad years. Now agriculture is surviving on the occasional reasonable year. For too often we either losing money or just scraping by, and it really puts into question the sustainability of our industry, and that puts into question the food security of the United Kingdom.
Over the last 24 months, retail prices have risen by over 18%, and farmers insist they are not profiting from the record retail numbers.
The consumer doesn't need the food to rise anymore. We need the food price that we receive at the bottom to be more equally shared, and we can manage that far better. The guys in the middle are taking too much, and they know they can get away with it.
In 2019, Theresa May agreed to net zero by statute, and there is a lack of knowledge or joined-up thinking around costly fertilisers.
I suppose for us as a crop farmer, one of the frustrating things around the Agriculture Minister's desire to cut methane, cut emissions, put restrictions on the use of slurries and organic manures. To me, they're a valuable fertiliser that we can drastically use in the arable industry, in the crop industry. We can take it from a livestock farmer. We can be part of the solution.
Within the 340 million income on farms, 298 is from government subsidies. Is it now time we looked at the possibility of open markets with a level playing fields on regulations?
That's a question for society. If, as businesses, we have to be viable. We need money in our pockets to buy the seed to plant for next year. We need to be able to grow our crops to feed our cattle next winter. So we either need sustained viable support from society, or we need more income from the marketplace. So, but either way, we cannot continue to function at a loss.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Northern Ireland.
The thing we want to make clear about this, Dougie's with us now, is that, Dougie, this is not a Northern Irish story that we're talking about here. You're from Northern Ireland, you were talking to Northern Irish farmers there, but I have predicted this as a farming reporter myself, as I started out as. I've always had this great interest, and I've said it till I'm blue in the face. Politicians, farmers, don't care about you. They do not care about you because there's no votes in it for you, and that's what it's about. Tell us how bad the situation is and what it means, what you fear this means.
Well, it is the worst situation that I have seen in farming, and I've been around agriculture all my life. And what we now see is that incomes just in Northern Ireland have went from over 600 million down to 340 million.
So they've halved. They've
47.6% down. And the only help that's being offered is more greening of land. And this was a net zero.
What does more greening of land mean?
Well, what they're paying you for now is taking land out of the agricultural sector, planting shrubs, trees, etc.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
98% of farmers.
How do they expect that we're going to feed ourselves, the people, and you talk about those farming families there and whatever it is, how they pay for their whole family circle? Why do they think that'll magically happen?
Well, it's obvious that they're not. I mean, one of those farmers there, he is quite a substantial farmer, is down to £11,500 a year income. I spoke to 2 farmers before I left Northern Ireland. And unfortunately, on a farm, you have a father, a son, both have to make livings out of that farm, and sometimes a grandson.
Yeah.
When the father retires, he still has to be kept by the business, because farming is a business. Yeah. That's a problem. And if you go back to the 1980s, Britain was 80% self-sufficient. Now we're less than 50% self-sufficient.
In terms of everything, or in terms of our food production?
In terms of our food production.
Yeah.
And we are now less than 50% self-sufficient, and we are in the top 3 of food importers in the world. And when you link that with things like obesity, diabetes...
And wars.
Yeah.
You know, they're going around the world and getting grain in from Ukraine or whatever it happens to be. But you see, there's so many influences here. There's American influence. I just look, everything, if it's bad, it's from America, believe me. And if it's cheap, it's from America as well. So it's all about the bottom line for those guys. They don't care what you eat. They don't care what it is. It's just about making money for them.
But €11,500 a year, I mean, they're not going to be able to continue, are they? This is a community that has been largely ignored.
Well, it's very much ignored. And at this moment in time, all 4 nations are now negotiating with the government for single farm payment. And because it ran out in the last mandate. So every government creates a new mandate. But in 2019, Theresa May brought in this net zero by statute. It wasn't brought into the House of Commons, it was agreed. And when you have things like those arable farmers now you have the ridiculous situation where they are swapping manure for straw off the barley because they need the manure, because the price of nitrogen fertiliser has went through the roof.
Yes.
I mean, it went to over £1,000 a tonne just 2 years ago when the Ukrainian war started, because we no longer produce nitrogen fertiliser. It's produced in Belarus, Russia.
Well, why do we not produce it?
Well, all that industrial stuff was put out of Europe.
Right.
And we now see this playing out the whole way across Europe. European farmers are rioting, they're blocking Brussels, they're ploughing up roads, and it's all for the same...
So a lot of this is to do with our green people and being more user-friendly. I can understand protecting the rivers from slurry and various things like that. But by and large, you're getting a lot of people legislating against farming communities, people who are from cities and people who just don't understand, nor do they care, incidentally.
Much worse, the government doesn't seem to understand cause and effect, because you have things like, OK, let's take 20% of your land out of production.
Yeah.
And you have 100 head of cattle, that's an acre per head, so you've took 20 cows out of your population. Then they want you to reduce your herd by 1/3 to do away with methane. So when these arable farmers go to grow their crops, where are they getting the manure from to feed the fields? So they're going to have to...
So you're making it clear to people manure is a commodity?
Oh, of course it is.
That
of course it is.
Trade with
it's ploughed into... Every time you take a crop out of the ground, you take nitrogen, you take nutrients out of the ground, you have to put it back. And if you are turning around, if you were somebody in the green side of things and saying to me, Dougie, we need to reduce this and reduce that, well, where do you get your nitrogen from? You get it from Russia, Belarus, the far side of Europe. It goes into a big ship.
Yes.
It's hauled by lorries, putting out CO2. It comes across to Britain. It's then lifted by other lorries that then transports it, much more than cattle will ever produce.
Yeah.
And that is worrying.
I don't know if you're not into farming, can you get a grip of what Dougie is saying here? But basically, this is bad news for everybody.
Very much so, because we have watched our food prices increase.
Yeah.
They're now 18%, they went up. And people say, oh, when inflation's back down to 2%, it doesn't mean that the prices have dropped to 2%. It means that it's only rising
by 2%.
By 2%. If we go to Tesco's, supermarkets, or whatever, I mean, 2 years ago, I could go in £100 trolley full. I went in last week, £70 a bag full.
Wow.
Well, look, please come back. We're going to get reaction gauge. Just get in touch with us today. Register what you have to say about all of this. That's how you do it. And we will get Dougie in again, and we will be answering questions, whether you're from the farming community and you feel you're represented, or whether you just have thought, hey, I'm a consumer, I didn't realise this affected me like this. But basically, when it comes to farming, politicians don't care. They don't care. Administration doesn't care. These people, their professions are dying. Farming is dying on its feet. who's going to do anything about it. Dougie, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. And also, what are you? Are you on Twitter or anything? People can get in touch with you? Or?
No, my only Twitter that I have, my only social media is through GB News.
OK.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Nick says, it's brilliant to see Dougie Booty in the studio. His reporting is always excellent.
There you are.
There's a lot of excitement about seeing you in the studio today, Dougie.
Thank you very much.
I'm not excited. Are you excited?
Yes, you are. Please. Your face lit up this morning when you saw Dougie. And Dougie had a bag of treats for you.
Dougie did have a bag of treats for me. See, when you're from Northern Ireland, we have certain foodstuffs and things that we eat in Northern Ireland that you can't get anywhere else. So basically, he came with me with a food parcel.
A Red Cross parcel.
Thank you very much, my friend. Much appreciated.
That's
Thank you
how
very
lovely
much
Dougie is, that he thinks of doing things like that. Thank you.
Right. So, the Great British Giveaway. We had the Great Dougie Giveaway there. This is the Great British Giveaway. 30,000 quid. It could be yours. Have a go.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, we'll be going to the Middle East as one of Hamas's top political leaders has been assassinated in Iran. We'll bring you the update on that. GB News Breakfast with Eamonn and Ellie.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Returning now to this breaking news from the Middle East. Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has said he and one of his bodyguards were assassinated in the capital, Tehran. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the death. Well, we're joined now by Middle East reporter Yotam Confino. Good to see you this morning, Yotam. Israel had previously vowed to kill Haniyeh and other Hamas leaders in the wake of October the 7th, but they haven't yet claimed responsibility for this.
They haven't claimed responsibility, but two Israeli ministers have already celebrated this assassination. One of them said, this is a great way to remove filth from this world. And the other one said, be careful what you wish for. So it's really just a matter of time before Israel takes official responsibility for this. It would either be through the Israeli army, the prime minister, or the defense minister. They all want to take responsibility for this, as he has been a dead man walking since October the 7th. Now, the question is really, which implications will this have? How will this escalate the situation? Because Hamas is severely damaged militarily in Gaza. And the only one who could really retaliate for Hamas would be Iran. Iran could argue that Israel has breached its sovereignty, attacking Tehran, and therefore they could use this as a justification to attack Israel once again. I'm not so sure that they'll go there, but this is probably the most likely harsh reaction that we'll see, as Hamas doesn't have the capabilities to really attack Israel proper.
Israel has also launched an airstrike on Beirut, haven't they, which they say has targeted a senior commander in Hezbollah. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so he was the senior advisor to Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. He also played a role in the 1983 bombing of a U.S. Marine Corps barrack. So he was wanted by the United States as well, and he's somebody that Israel says has blood on his hands, given his role apparently in firing or orchestrating the rocket attack on the Golan Heights on Saturday, which killed 12 children. So it's someone that was high on their list, and I would say that his assassination is much more likely to escalate the situation further, as everyone have been looking at the northern border between Israel and Hezbollah in the past couple of months. This is where we expect that a real escalation of the conflict could happen, as Hezbollah is much stronger, still has its military capabilities relatively intact, and they're much stronger than Hamas in general. So this is what we should be worrying about. Again, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh has been a dead man walking for 8-9 months now, and they will not be able to really attack Israel in the same way that, for example, Hezbollah will be.
So 2 assassinations, 2 commanders killed from Hezbollah and from Hamas. As you just touched on, there are fears and concerns that this is going to turn into an all-out regional war. Where do you predict we go next? What happens next?
So first of all, Israel will wait now to see what will happen. I don't think they have any more assassinations lined up. Those 2 alone are really major political or military achievements for Israel to hit both Beirut and Tehran and hit such 2 high targets within 24 hours. I think they will stop now, and they'll wait to see which kind of response will come. If Hezbollah continues to fire rockets at northern Israel only as a retaliation, they might contain the situation and not go into a full war. But there is common sense in Israel that if they start firing rockets at Tel Aviv, for example, that will mean an all-out war. So that's what we're going to have to look for in the coming hours, the coming days. And of course, the ceasefire negotiations, which are theoretically continuing, it doesn't look good. Let's put it like that. I don't think they might necessarily be completely off the table now, but I don't think that it's a good sign, especially for those families of hostages who are waiting anxiously to get any deal that would get their loved ones out of Gaza.
Yotam Confino, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll head to the break there, and we've got lots of stories to talk about in the newspaper. Obviously, today's paper's dominated by the 3 pictures of Elsie, Biba and Alice. and the reaction there has been to their tragic murders. Norman Baker, Rennie Honderkamp after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs. On Merseyside, Hartwood Road in Southport is closed for an investigation. Sussex Road is also closed. On the M42 in the West Midlands, there are southbound queues towards junction 5 at Solihull because of road works. There are delays of up to half an hour. Some cancelled trains through Cambridge thanks to a trespasser earlier. Delays too of up to half an hour. Some cancelled trains into and out of Paddington Station in London because of a points failure. It's also left severe delays on the Elizabeth line into and out of Paddington, and also a reduced service on the Heathrow Express. And on the M26 in Kent, it's starting to build on the westbound approach to the M25 because of lane closures for roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
With their views on what the papers are reflecting today, Norman Baker, we say hello, good morning to him, and Rennie Honderkamp as well. Norman, we just want to start with these three children and murdered, and their faces all over the newspapers, and the reaction that we saw on the streets of Southport last night, the violent reaction.
Well, the whole thing is a horror story from start to finish, isn't it? I mean, it's just appalling that we can have innocent children just killed in this way. I mean, I think the words fail me to think about who could want to do that, and the suffering and grief that their parents and others will have as a consequence of that. And then secondly, to make it worse, you've got these riots going on of people who, I don't know what they're rioting about, but they're rioting against the police, and the police were there to try and identify who was responsible and hold them to account. I mean, the police are on the side of law and order and trying to bring to bear on the person who's been responsible for this. So why people are reacting that way about attacking the police is just beyond me. But I think it's almost chaos, and society's developed into chaos up there. And I feel very sorry for the families who were having a vigil and all the people who were trying to bring the community together and show respect, to have all this garbage arising to create violence. I mean, it's just, this is violence. These girls being killed, and so more violence on top of that.
That's the important thing. That is the important thing first and foremost. In those three little innocent faces, Rennie.
I mean, I'm really, really struggling with this story, and
I don't know how any parent copes with the loss of their child. You know, as a parent, I have a 5-year-old called Alice. I dropped her yesterday at a tennis camp, and for the first time in my life, I thought, is she safe? And I've never thought that before about a camp, because of course she's safe. She's at a tennis camp. Why wouldn't she be?
Well, of course she's safe. She's at a
dance
dance class and yoga class.
I don't know how a parent copes with this. I'm not sure I could cope with it, to be honest with you. And I can't tell you how I would be feeling. And, you know, we have to think about these children as we do all of the other children that have been murdered around the world and in the past. You know, the Manchester Arena. We have to think of these children and we have to make them safe. Whether or not we decide to take our money from elsewhere and put it into the police and, you know, have so much more investment in security of our country, which does seem to be breaking down at the moment.
I think there's a lack of trust, Norman, brought about by officialdom. I'm not criticising it for this. I'm just saying that when the police hide behind, or legally they have to give certain information and they can't give all information, the public often don't understand why that is. And social media fills in the void.
It does. Look, I mean, sadly, this is not new in some ways. I mean, we've got a situation where I know when I was an MP, we had people working for the ambulance service and fire service who were being attacked when you went to incidents. I mean, why on earth would people attack somebody trying to help society and rescue people? But that's what was happening. And people jumped to conclusions. Again, from my own patch, going back some years now, but there was a paediatrician who was surrounded. Her house was surrounded and attacked because people mixed up paediatrician and paedophile as words. I mean, they don't actually find out the facts. They just jump to conclusions and off they go.
They do, but I also think we are at a very, very difficult point in society where society is being fractured at the moment. People are feeling, I'm not justifying this at all, of course they shouldn't, please, but we are at a point where people are feeling frustrated by what's going on. Nothing is working. They can't get hospital appointments, they can't get school places, they can't get housing. And I think this is a tinderbox, and this is what we saw. Not justifying it, nobody should be attacking police, of course they shouldn't, but we also have a society where we need to start answering questions.
And the social media as well, I mean, misinformation, disinformation. The Russian state media are among those falsely identifying the suspect here as a asylum seeker who came over on a boat last year. And the police, as Eamonn was saying, legally can't say very much because this attacker is 17 years old. But they had to say last night that the name that's being peddled on social media is false.
Yes, I mean, I listened to the BBC this morning before I came in, and the story I heard there was that he was born in Cardiff of Rwandan stock. I mean, so that is entirely different to what's been said by the Russians. You've got to bear in mind that that space now, social media, is being exploited not just by people who don't find out the facts, but maliciously by countries such as Russia and China to try and destabilise this country and other Western countries. That's what's happening now.
Isn't it?
It is working.
I mean, you look at what happened in Leeds 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now and again, police vehicles, official vehicles being burnt, and you can get away with this. You see, I think when there's no penalty associated. I mean, you know, Northern Ireland was a very good example of this. You could do whatever you wanted to a police car, a police vehicle, burn it down. No one was sent to jail because they fired a petrol bomb at a police vehicle, you know. And it seems to be, you get away with that, that's okay. And I feel sorry for the police forces. Well, they're not forces anymore, they're services, aren't they? And, you know, the ambulance and fire crews and whatever. But, however, I can go on about this forever. There are people who justifiably feel that their concerns are not being taken seriously.
Exactly. This is the problem. And we saw this. It wasn't just Leeds a couple of weeks ago. There were also riots in Whitechapel where they were rioting because of something that was going on in Bangladesh. And the problem that we have right now, and I spoke to this on this very channel, is that we have created silos, ghettos of people, because we haven't integrated people properly. And what's happening is this is bubbling up under the surface, and we're seeing this kind of disorder. Couple that with a police force that's been cut to the bone, that are dealing with people's thought crimes rather than actual crimes. And this is what we've got. This is why I say maybe we need to go back to look at our police force, bolster the numbers, train them and empower them. Empower them to do something.
Norman, this comes back to the job that Rachel Reeves has got. The country's broke.
Yes.
She ain't got any money. She's already being criticised by people saying, oh, just what? She's going to raise taxes in October. What alternative has she got?
Well, I mean, it is a terrible legacy that she's inherited. There's no question about that. I mean, the country is in a terrible shambles, and the previous government has got a lot to answer for. So she has got a big problem. She's either got to raise taxes or cut public services. She can't print money indefinitely or borrow indefinitely. They're the two options you've got under these circumstances. And there will be tax rises which have to come through. And she's ruled out the VAT and national insurance and income tax. So she'll look at other things, and that will include, for example, looking at capital gains tax, I think, when it comes down to an inheritance tax.
I've got to jump in here. I'm going to argue. It's rubbish that we haven't got any money. We've got plenty of money. What we have is a massive super state. We've got 120,000 more civil servants today than we had in 2019. Fire them all. We don't need them. Cut the state.
You do need them. You do need them. You need them to get so we have proper roads, so that
we don't need the 120,000 extra that came in during COVID and have just stayed there with their big pensions and their big salaries and their jobs for life. We need to cut the state. We need to cut the rubbish that we're spending on diversity and equity and all of that. We need to cut the waste in the NHS, which is massive.
How do you make anything happen? Speaking as a politician, then, without that infrastructure, how do you make things?
Well, first of all, there was a lot of civil servants cut between 2010 and 2019. So some of the people who came in 2019 were actually restoring posts that had been cut. And the number of people involved in diversity, I'm not defending all that, but it's minuscule in terms of the public
But this argument never works, because everyone always says, oh, it's drip, 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 it's a tiny amount. There's so much of it. It's not drip, drip, drip. We've just sent £11 billion to African countries for net zero, whilst we're going to raid our pensioners to pay the junior doctors. We should start at home.
Well, there's an issue about what you do with overseas aid, but actually overseas aid...
That's not overseas aid, it's net zero, 11
Well, I mean, it's helping other countries to become climate responsible, and that's actually in everybody's interest that we do that. But in terms of where we're going with Rachel Reeves, I mean, she's got a horrendous task going ahead. And, of course, she'll be criticised for whatever she does, because people who benefit keep quiet in any case, and people who lose out will make a fuss about it. That's politics for you.
But life is... I always remember Margaret Thatcher saying she ran the country the way she would run her house. So, for instance, let's just take migration or whatever. She might say, well, I've got a four-bedroomed house. I can give one of those bedrooms to people who need somewhere to sleep. I can't give 3 bedrooms.
Exactly.
I can't give 4 bedrooms.
Exactly.
And I sit and I look, the analogy, whether you agree with Thatcher or not, the analogy is interesting. So when it comes to all things, why can't we run the country, Norman, the way you would run your household finances?
Well, that's an interesting philosophical debate which could go on for quite a long time. I mean, you can to some extent, but I mean, the reality is that you're in control to some extent of your own finances for your house. You're not in control necessarily of what happens with the country, because there are overseas people speculating on your currency. There are events overseas which cause a country to go off piste, as it were. Look at what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, and all these forces which you can't control. And this is the thing which politicians don't want to admit, actually. They're not in this country, in any country actually, perhaps they are in America to some extent or China, they're not in control of what happens. There's so many external forces that you don't control, and you have to deal with these things. It's like a ship on the ocean, you know, it gets buffeted around.
Well, perhaps we need to close the doors and look within rather than...
Well, that doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of the cost of overseas raw materials, or change anything in terms of the global insecurity.
But that's because we've allowed it all to go abroad.
No, it's just we're part of the world.
There was a report this week that our manufacturing now is non-existent in this country because we've allowed it to go abroad. Well, perhaps if we'd have kept it home, we would have had jobs for people here, and we would have been a more prosperous country.
We're looking for reaction, and we should reflect it here on farming today as well.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I am totally convinced in all my years that politicians don't care about farming.
100%.
They just don't care. And Dougie Beattie's got great reports about it today. How people's income is halved, how farmers are doing 11,000 quid a year.
Yeah.
Pam says we're in the process of selling our family farm. We cannot keep making losses. Everyone around here is growing wildflowers, as it pays more to grow them than it does actual food.
Yeah.
There's going to be a real shortage of food.
Greening the country isn't going to feed us. That's the thing. Look, we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed for your discussions. We'll see you again in 40 minutes' time.
Let's have a look at the weather now with Annie Shuttleworth. It's set to be another scorcher.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another hot day today, but as the humidity rises, so does the thunderstorm risk across southern areas. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry, warm and sunny day. I think the sunshine will be more widely felt across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland into this afternoon. There will still be some hazier sunshine here and there, but I think for most of us, a dry and warm day. But across the south coast, notice these showers starting to edge ever closer to the south coast. There is some uncertainty in whether we'll see any impacts from that, but there is a warning in force. Now, away from that thunderstorm risk, temperatures still climbing into the high 20s, the low 30s still possible. We could see 32 degrees again today, but into this evening it will stay quite warm, even across parts of Scotland where it has been a bit of a cooler week so far. It's eastern areas of Scotland that will be warmest. In the west, with still a little bit more in the way of cloud around, temperatures in the mid-teens here this evening. To Northern Ireland, potentially some hazy sunshine, some clouds still lingering across parts of Wales, but as I said, it's across the south coast where temperatures are the highest, still in the mid to high 20s to end this evening, where the humidity's rising and that thunderstorm risk does increase. So that's where the weather warnings in force across southeastern areas of England through this afternoon and into the evening. But overnight, that risk becomes more widespread across parts of England and Wales. Parts of South Wales and then northeastern England could see some heavy downpours, large hail and lightning as well overnight. And temperatures will be high. It's going to be a warm and potentially quite muggy night tonight quite widely. So a warm start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine across the north and west, but in the east still a risk of some very heavy downpours. A continued risk of thunderstorms and hail into Thursday afternoon as well. As that area clears away to the east, it's from the west we start to see more in the way of showers, thunderstorms as well, and it will be another very warm and humid feeling day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs, so we'll need to continue on to what becomes the northbound M9 at that point. On Merseyside, Hartwood Road in Southport remains closed each way between Kensington Road and Manchester Road for an ongoing investigation. Sussex Road is also closed at the crossroads. On the M42 in the West Midlands, there are southbound queues towards roadworks at junction 5 at Solihull. There's a reduced Great Western Rail service into and out of Paddington Station in London because of a points failure. Severe delays too on the Elizabeth line between Paddington and Heathrow, and a reduced service on the Heathrow Express. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of the roadworks there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. Thank you, GB News.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Clashes with protesters and police last night in Southport following those fatal stabbings of 3 girls at a dance class.
Prime Minister has said anybody involved will feel the full force of the law.
Bottles and bricks were thrown, a police van was set alight, and nearly 40 officers were injured in violent disorder.
Families of the victims expressed their devastation as BB King, aged 6, Elsie Stancombe, 7, Alice Aguirre, aged 9, are named as those girls who have been killed.
Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Iran's capital, Tehran. It's now been confirmed.
Hugh Edwards is in court today. The former BBC presenter is due at Westminster Magistrates, charged with making 37 indecent images of children.
Farming crisis. The new government has been accused of ignoring rural communities because they failed to get a mention in the King's speech.
Eco-protesters Just Stop Oil targets holidaymakers at Heathrow and Gatwick Airport. They'll be asking, should we scrap summer holidays abroad to cut emissions? Looking for your views on that one.
A sizzling summer. Yellow heat health warnings remain in place across parts of the UK, as yesterday was the hottest day of the year.
Morning. As the hot weather persists, there's a risk of thunderstorms for some of us this afternoon. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Time is 1 minute past 7 o'clock on this Wednesday morning. Good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Just thanks so much for getting in touch. A lot of you feel very strong, very angry, very sad, it has to be said as well, about events in Southport, sorry.
Sylvie says, Eamonn and Peter speaking the truth. They understand the anger that people feel. It is the families of those murdered wee children who are being denied justice. Why does the law protect this murderer? As for politicians and political commentators, they are so out of touch. It's horrendous.
Well, we don't know the law's protecting anybody, that's the thing. The Prime Minister's statement last night was appalling, says Nick. He was bland, he was soulless, he was unempathetic. It was straight out of the media training playbook. Funny enough, Nick, I agree with you. It doesn't say the man doesn't mean it, but he did, you could tell. I'd like to commend the first responders, tick, the people who live near it, tick, everything. It just was a list of people, tick, 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 tick. And he's not the only politician that does it. They all think that they've got to give credence to everybody involved. Of course we do. But there's ways of doing it. You can just say to everybody involved, you don't have to go through this list of people. And that's the problem with politicians. Why aren't they human? Why aren't they human? And why do we criticise people who are human and speak from the heart and speak from the soul? And, instead we get these people who go through this robotic state and they think that's all OK. It makes you distant, it makes you seem out of touch. Keir Starmer, he did say the right words. I'm not criticising for that, but it's the way he said them.
And people want to hear words that are from the heart, especially when it's about 3 little girls who have now been named.
Why?
We've got these pictures.
Why did that happen? Anyway, let's go to Sophie Reaper, who's there at the scene for us this morning, and she's going to tell us more. Sophie, good morning to you again. Another very, very sad morning. And who would have thought violence last night? No one was predicting that.
Absolutely. I think it came as a shock to all of us, especially after how well the community came together yesterday. But that's exactly what's happened here this morning. You can probably see behind me the clean-up is already underway. The carcass of that police van that was burned out last night has already been cleared away. Local businesses and local residents are coming together in order to start that clean-up. And joining me now is one of those local residents, Alex Totty. Alex, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you've been here since before 6 o'clock this morning. What made you want to get out of bed and come and help out?
We're local, we're all in it together. It was a mess when we arrived here, but you've probably 50 to 70 people now, all offering helping. Just let Ricky's lad know where to...
There's a skip just arriving, just to say that this is obviously an ongoing process, so we'll just let Alex sort that. There we go. Now, we've spoken to other local people this morning, and they were really keen to reiterate that this last night, what happened last night, it wasn't people from Southport, that it was something else that was going on. What's your take on that?
I was at the place in the centre till 6:30, 7:15. That was all peaceful. Finished work, went home, and then from my building I could see the fire about 9, 10 o'clock, and from the lads it was going on till 3 this morning. So, you know, the faster we get it moving, the faster we get the road tidied, and they can start replacing and getting life back to normal for everyone.
And in terms of, obviously, at the heart of all this, there's that really vicious knife attack that this community is still reeling from how horrific the outcome of that has been. 3 little girls who lost their lives. Do you condemn the violence of last night?
It's pointless and clueless. Ripping walls down of people who live locally to take the bricks to smash cars up. Is there any sense? It's just stupidity. So anyway, we've got to get the skip sorted and then this place tidied up. So is that all right?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. He's straight back to it there. But that is the way this community feels. They're really keen to let people know that this wasn't the residents of Southport. We spoke to one gentleman this morning who said that this was organised. This was people who came from elsewhere to spread a message of hate. And in fact, the people of Southport really don't agree what was they don't agree with what was going on here last night.
Sophie, I'd like to ask you, we were looking at you and talking to you last week from the Paris Olympics, and you could say, you know, one of the most glamorous things you could do as a reporter, and this week you find yourself in Southport, and amid such sadness which must be tangible to you, how would you describe it? I mean, is it having an effect on you, for instance?
Well, as a reporter, this is part and parcel of it, unfortunately. You know, since I've been at GB News the last 2 years, there have been some incredibly difficult and harrowing stories that I've had to cover, but this is... It feels different. There's 2 sides to it. It was so difficult yesterday seeing families with young children come and lay flowers down at the scene of that horrific attack, and obviously throughout the day we got more information. We heard the names and saw the faces of those 3 little girls who've had their lives stolen away from them. But then there's this other side, this anger, raw anger. And when we were here at the rally, the protests, the riots, whatever people want to call it, last night, myself and my team were here. We saw it all unfolding. When you see that reckless hate, it's really, really hard to take. And I think it will have an impact on not just me, but our team and the people of Southport as well. And that's the crucial part of this.
Yeah. Do you know, I think about people were asking, Sophie, how do we move on from this? How do we move on? You could never move on from that. Why should you move on from that as well? I don't think you can sort of decide, well, today's Wednesday, we feel quite bad, but by Friday we'll be okay. We'll not be okay. Anybody who knew those girls, anyone related to them, life has changed forever now, surely.
Absolutely, and I think that is something that the families will hold on to, that the legacy of their girls will now be held in the hearts of the people of Southport forever time to come. In terms of moving on, like you say, I don't think people will ever fully move on. I think the people of this community will pick themselves up, as we're seeing here this morning, this clean-up process. I cannot believe that it is just after 7 o'clock in the morning and there are already so many people who have... This isn't an organised clean-up. This is just people who have volunteered. They've woken up this morning seen that things need to be done, and they have come and cracked on with it. And I think that is a really beautiful thing to take away from this, that this community, they're coming together in this time of adversity and heartbreak. And although that despair and that grief will remain for a very long time to come, they're doing what they can to pick up whatever pieces they can and hold it together for those families.
Thank you for reflecting that for us this morning, Sophie, because even speaking to Alex Totty there, who's been there since before 6 o'clock this morning, using his own time to sort out that clean-up operation this morning. He really is the best of us, and the community coming together. And we did see that last night as well, didn't we? Before this unrest and before the rioting, there was a community coming together and holding a vigil for these 3 beautiful little girls.
Thanks, Sophie. Thanks. We'll leave it there and we'll speak again to you shortly. Thank you very much indeed.
We're joined now by the Spectator's political correspondent, James Heal. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has described these people last night and the unrest as thugs. What do you make of what she had to say?
Well, I think there's a real contrast coming from Sophie's reporting there, is the difference between the organised group of outsiders who came in yesterday, and from talking to locals, as she said, that's what seems to have been the case, that these people weren't from the local area, and the kind of organic nature of what's happened this morning, where people have turned up because they've got local community buy-in, they presumably knew some of the people affected by this, and they've decided to start clearing up the streets, and because, of course, that's their community. They care about their community, they want to do what they can.
Those are people in the community, has to be said. However, my friend, we cannot ignore those people who did turn up to protest last night. It might be distasteful, it might be a lot of things, I may not agree with it, but they have got a grievance, rightly or wrongly, and they see, for instance, the way they were treated last night differently than the way people were treated in Leeds 4 or 5 weeks ago. What do we do about that?
I think that a big debate is a legitimate debate can be had around police operationality in terms of marches and demonstrations and police protests and all those kind of things. I definitely think that's fair. I think the key thing is what can we respond based on the information we have available. Given that there's a given that contempt of court has now been activated, it is just very difficult to talk about these things in terms of kind of who and what, and what we know about the victim, the perpetrator involved in all of it. So I think that people can have a discussion around that in the generality, but I would be kind of wary about getting into sort of comparing different things. All we can say is, don't firebomb a mosque, don't firebomb a police car, and respect communities that are grieving.
And you shouldn't really have to say that. That should be matter of form. However, my friend, that's not the reality. That's the reality. What we're looking at there is the reality. And Keir Starmer walked into the reality yesterday and didn't get a very good reception.
I think that there was a lot of anger. I think from hearing that report from Sophie and from reading different things about what's happened on the ground, obviously there's a lot of very visceral emotion right now. So therefore it's up to people, and your earlier package talked about the police playing a role in that, kind of responding to that, acknowledging that. And it is just often just hearing people's pain, just listening and being in that mode where you listen rather than kind of come down and force on people. So I think there's a definite element of that.
But you see, we were talking there, we had that complaint from a viewer called Nick, and basically he was saying, Keir Starmer, show some compassion for God's sake. I do believe Keir Starmer cared. I do believe he was trying to. However, he is a tick box politician, it has to be said, and the police are going through a lot of tick box operations as well, what they can say, what they can't say. The trouble is they are both leaving the general public, ordinary people behind who don't understand why things are said in this way.
I definitely think some political leaders, policemen, are better at responding to that. I think, Blair's speech after the J.M. Bolger attack 30 years ago was, really struck a chord, and people really resonated with that. I think Keir Starmer, it's fair to say, maybe finds that difficult in a public sense. I think he's maybe a little bit from that background. That said, I also think, when you have a tragedy of this kind, I'm not sure anyone finds the right words to say, and it's very difficult to lead on it. People are so angry and upset and just bewildered by what has happened. That even the most talented statesman would struggle with this.
Sure. We're also struggling politically and from a criminality point of view of what to do about knives. Knives are behind this. How big a problem is this? Can it be solved? What should be done?
Yeah, absolutely. We're dealing with big forces here, but in terms of the public policy response, knife crime is going to be the big thing. Labour have pledged by the end of this Parliament to say they're going to halve knife crime, bring it back down to around half current levels, and obviously it's spiralled hugely over the past 10 years. What can you do about that? It may be, when we discover about where this knife came from, it might be from a retailer. Research from the local government association suggests that about 6 in 10 retail outlets are potentially breaking rules in terms of underage knife sales, so that'll be something that's looked at. But also in terms of kind of the culture, rehabilitation, and also making sure that people just don't pick up a knife as a response to things.
James, thanks very much indeed for your take. Really appreciate it. As you say, it's a very, very difficult thing to negotiate and to reach everybody on it, but feelings are obviously very, very high. Your views welcome this morning.
John said, I said a little prayer for the 3 angels yesterday at my son's grave. This country is so depressing. And Adrian says it must be very difficult for the presenters and for Sophie reporting on this. I haven't cried as much as I did yesterday. Every time that you show the pictures of the girls, you cannot even imagine. This country needs to change, says Adrian.
I absolutely agree. And we're starting an inquiry into the Omagh bombing, something which affected me being there to this day. It would affect me. It never leaves you. The Dunblane shootings was something else that I found very hard to shake off. And we heard from Sophie Reaper today the effect all of this is having on her. But, you know, should you show yourself above all that and not to have emotion and not to have feeling? I think people prefer to realise you feel exactly the way they do, and we do.
Returning now to this breaking news from the Middle East, and Hamas's top political leader Ismail Haniyeh has been killed.
So the Revolutionary Guard in Iran has said he and one of his bodyguards were assassinated in Tehran. Let's go to Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Robert, tell us about this guy. How important was he, and how big a loss to Hamas will it be?
He's very important indeed, and he's a big loss to the negotiation process for a ceasefire in Gaza and a possible release of the hostages. He was the point man because he was the political leader of Hamas. This is a big blow by Israel, and Israel has a history of taking out Hamas leaders, including its founders, Sheikh Yassin and Dr. Rantisi in 2004. And they've had several attempts, very important recently, very much part of the story, to take out the military leadership, to really get that in Gaza. That they have failed to do. They may have killed 1, 2, or even 3 guerrilla commanders in Gaza, but they've not got the top man, Yahya Sinwar, who is now the war leader, and he's the war leader they cannot get. Things are very difficult because Israel is pursuing this targeted assassination campaign, as they call it. They took out it seems it was an Israeli missile that or drone that killed a very senior Hezbollah leader involved in the fighting on the northern borders of Israel, and particularly the attack on the village at the weekend, which killed 12 children in a football field.
We're talking about this targeted assassination that we've seen the Hezbollah commander be killed, and we've seen a top Hamas leader be killed as well. There is great fear about what happens next, and could this turn into an all-out regional war?
Well, the problem is that is the problem, indeed, with targeted assassination. Just throw in 2 more, that the Israelis killed a senior. Don't let me get too confusing about this. Hamas operational commander who may even have directed the massacres on October the 7th, October the 6th, and October the 7th, that long, awful campaign which killed 1,400 people in the villages and the kibbutz next to Gaza. He was killed at the beginning of January, and they killed an Iranian commander in Damascus around the 1st of April. So this is consistent. Hence your question and argument. What does it do? Does it stop war, or is it part of a campaign to proliferate and spread war? And my fear is, and I know it was your fear when we were having a conversation about this very thing yesterday off camera, yes, I think there is a real danger of the war spreading. Israel is engaged on 3-4 fronts now. The north, in Gaza, of course, with the Houthis, and possibly elements penetrating the West Bank, and watch for elsewhere. It is very difficult to see, with its resources, how long this can continue, particularly as a lot of the Israeli public are getting quite worried about yet another year of war with almost no clear direction, can I put it like that?
Got to leave it there, Robert. Thanks very much indeed for your analysis. Much appreciated there. That's after the assassination of Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, killed in Iran.
Nick says it's really good news what's happened in Tehran.
19 minutes past 7 o'clock. Let's get the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another hot day today, but as the humidity rises, so does the thunderstorm risk across southern areas. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry, warm and sunny day. I think the sunshine will be more widely felt across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland into this afternoon. There will still be some hazier sunshine here and there, but I think for most of us, a dry and warm day. But across the south coast, notice these showers starting to edge ever closer to the south coast. There is some uncertainty in whether we'll see any impacts from that, but there is a warning in force. Now, away from that thunderstorm risk, temperatures still climbing into the high 20s, the low 30s still possible. We could see 32 degrees again today, but into this evening it will stay quite warm, even across parts of Scotland where it has been a bit of a cooler week so far. It's eastern areas of Scotland that will be warmest. In the west, with still a little bit more in the way of cloud around, temperatures in the mid-teens here this evening. To Northern Ireland, potentially some hazy sunshine, some clouds still lingering across parts of Wales, but as I said, it's across the south coast where temperatures are the highest, still in the mid to high 20s to end this evening, where the humidity's rising and that thunderstorm risk does increase. So that's where the weather warnings in force across southeastern areas of England through this afternoon and into the evening. But overnight, that risk becomes more widespread across parts of England and Wales. Parts of South Wales and then northeastern England could see some heavy downpours, large hail and lightning as well overnight. And temperatures will be high. It's going to be a warm, potentially quite muggy night tonight quite widely. So a warm start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine across the north and west, but in the east still a risk of some very heavy downpours. A continued risk of thunderstorms and hail into Thursday afternoon as well. As that area clears away to the east, it's from the west we start to see more in the way of showers, thunderstorms as well, and it will be another very warm and humid feeling day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You can't say the weather's nice. Most people would say the weather's nice. But the accidents that happen because of hot weather, people, you see, I would never ever think, I can't swim, but even if I did.
You can't swim?
No, I can't swim.
Really?
Neither can any of my brothers, no.
Oh.
So, you know, I can understand people going to a pool or going to a hotel or a spa or anything like that. I understand all that. No hassle. But I would never think of swimming in a wild water lake.
No, neither would I.
Or a reservoir.
No.
Or anything.
People do it.
Of course they do it. I know so many people say to me, oh, I'm off to do a bit of wild water swimming in the sea or whatever. And I think, God. But anyway, they do it. But it comes with risks, doesn't it?
Of course it does, yeah, especially in this hot weather. Cold water shock, I believe it's called. It's basically when the air temperature gets so hot, but the water remains really cold. And then if you jump in, it does very bad things to the body. And it can.
So we're going to be talking
drowning.
about that shortly after the Great British Giveaway.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
So look, what we'll do, we will be talking about, would you go out swimming in a reservoir or a lake or whatever, because we want to highlight the dangers of doing just that. But lots of people do it. Back talking about that right after this.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
OK, we've got nice sunshine, but we've also got yellow health heat warnings there issued today, and people looking to cool off all around the country.
Yeah, and how do you do that? Well, you might take a dip in your local swimming pool, your Lido. You may even head to the beach or a local reservoir.
But all these things come with dangers as well. Accidental drownings, water safety, and a new study has now found that once the temperature hits 25 degrees, which it has, today could be 32 degrees, the risk is 5 times higher.
Well, joining us now is Robert Gofton, CEO of the Royal Lifesaving Society UK. Good to see you this morning, Robert. And it's so important that we talk about this, isn't it? Because when you talk about hot weather, people instantly think about going for a dip to cool off, don't they? But there are dangers associated with that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You're absolutely right. The study has shown that the hotter the temperature, the more increase there is in drowning for people going swimming. So our message is really learn some basic water safety, but also understand that there is a link with the hot temperature. We also found that if you're young, so between 13 and 24, you're more likely to drown when it's hot. And as a really good example, in July of 2022, we had 4 days where the weather exceeded 38 degrees, and there were 19 tragic drownings during that period. So the message is really clear.
Goodness me, awful, awful. But you see, Robert, when you look at that, is that because obviously more of us are taking to water? Is it where we're taking to water as well? Because a lot of people, and Ellie and I were just talking about this before the break, a lot of people say, oh yes, I'm going to this river, I'm going to this lake, I'm going to this canal, I'm doing all sorts of things that I would never think of. It would just say to me, danger, danger, danger. But a lot of people, they don't want to be discouraged from this. This is the way they see swimming.
You're absolutely right. And we know from, again, research that 63% of drownings occur inland. If you go to the coast, pretty much every good beach is going to have a lifeguard on. The RNLI do a fantastic job in the summer of keeping people safe. And if you swim between the flags on a supervised beach, you are going to be very, very safe. The problem comes when people venture sort of off a supervised area, particularly in open water inland where there aren't lifeguards, and the dangers are very different. And unfortunately, there's nobody in there that's going to help if you get into trouble. So I think the message for us today is that there are some really key tips and information that you can share, particularly with family and friends that are thinking about going when it's hot, to swim in areas that we would consider aren't safe and aren't supervised. And that's the main key thing. There are lots of places, lots of designated bathing sites where you can swim safely.
And it is important to reflect as well, isn't it, Robert, that often you find it is teenagers and young adults who are proportionately more likely to drown in these sets of circumstances, especially teenage boys, right, who are going out in groups.
I get that. But I know lots of women in their 40s, whatever, who would be heading, where are you going tonight, or whatever it is? Oh, a group of 6 of us are going to whatever reservoir, or we're going to this wild lake, or whatever it happens to be. And I had friends in Northern Ireland, and they go wild water swimming.
Wild water swimming, yeah.
Yes.
Big thing in Northern Ireland, yeah.
But you see, I know this girl who does this, and she does it. You look at her and you think, I don't know, but this is not me. They do it naked.
Oh,
right.
No.
So I don't know what that's called. It's not got a name, Robert. It's not got a name. It's more than naked swimming. But they go to the sea, and they're older people, and they get this huge thrill out of being wild and naked all at the same time.
Yeah, I can't comment on that particularly, but what I can do is tell you that unfortunately this is predominantly a men issue. So we know that 83% of men end up.
But my friend, is alcohol associated with that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that just young men in particular are bigger risk takers. So rather than, be prepared, have the right equipment, it sounds like your wild swimming friends are really doing the right thing. They're going in a group, they're going to locations collectively, and they know what they're doing. Whereas if you just instantaneous and spontaneously jump into a river or a lake when it's just because it's hot weather, you're not really preparing yourself to understand what the water temperature is going to be like. You talked about cold shock, really important issue. But also there are currents, rips in the sea, lots of hidden dangers in open water. And I think unless you understand and have the information prior and you plan, you're going to end up in probably a difficult situation that can be avoided.
We're going to get a lot of people, Robert, who will defend their right to do it differently, to do it unsupervised and whatever. I know people will feel strongly about this. I mean, personally, I would be with you if I was involved with my kids or whatever. I'd be saying somewhere where there's a lifeguard, somewhere which is nice and warm and sanitized, and the showers afterwards, and you know, whatever. That would be me. But a lot of people like the wildness, don't they?
Absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with open water swimming. It's a fantastic activity. I think we need to separate, again, the fact that there are people who are doing this on a regular basis with the right equipment in good locations, with those people that are just because the weather's hot, feeling like they can go for a swim anywhere and not really thinking about the consequences. And they're the people that we need to focus on. Wild water swimming, the risk of drowning is very, very small because they know what they're doing. We're talking about a big proportion here who literally just get into the water because it's hot. And the weather, yes, it's hot, but it really doesn't help you prepare and be prepared for swimming in a safe way. And that's the message. Really think about getting proper advice and information before you jump in.
Well, thanks for getting that advice across today. Robert is from the Royal Life Saving Society in Britain, and I hope it's not too busy a summer for you. 19 deaths over 4 days. Last time we had a spell of good weather, and this is day number 3. Thanks very much, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Really important message, that one, isn't it? So especially if you've got children or grandchildren at home, no jumping into cold lakes, cold reservoirs in this hot weather, because you can induce cold water shock. It's a really important message. Swimmer? I can swim. I wouldn't be doing anything wild.
You wouldn't
swimming.
Be jumping.
I wouldn't be jumping. I'd be taking the stairs.
Yeah.
It's obviously the safe thing to do as well.
Would you do the wild water naked swimming?
I certainly wouldn't, no.
You wouldn't?
For lots of different reasons, no. Would you?
Well, I'm often asked to do it, you know. I mean, people say, you know, Eamonn, how much more of you can we see? But I'd worry about displacing so much water at the time. Might cause a tsunami somewhere, you know, so I thought maybe not. Back with the papers right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit Slip Road remains closed at junction 9 at Bannockburn for emergency repairs, so you'll have to continue on to the northbound M9 there. In Lancashire, the A59 is closed in both directions off junction 31 of the M6 near Preston because of a fire at a nearby farm. On Merseyside, Hartwood Road remains closed each way between Kensington Road and Manchester Road for an investigation. Sussex Road is also closed. There's disruption to train services into and out of Paddington Station in London this morning because of a points failure at Southall. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking nearly half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. On the clockwise M25 towards there, it's very slow, taking nearly half an hour from junction 4 at Orpington. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Now we're looking for stories here, and this is the latest sort of footballers. Well, how would you call it? Like Waggate? You know, there was that Colleen Rooney and court case, whatever. This is Kyle Walker, the England defender, and here to talk about this, former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and GP and medical writer Dr. Rennie Honderkamp with this one. Rennie, so tell us about Kyle Walker and this amazing love triangle that he's involved in.
This is Kyle Walker, who is married with 4 children, and he's had a long-term on-and-off affair with Lauren Goodyear. I don't know
Goodman. And he has children with Lauren as well?
Yes, 2.
Right, so that's 6 children in total?
It is. And you think he didn't go to his sex education lessons at school, did he? So that's the first thing I would say, because it's all very well having an affair with this woman, but why did he have 2 children with her? Because it is possible to not have children and still have sex.
But it suggests that the relationship was maybe stronger than it's being painted now.
Yeah, although Lauren Goodyear is being accused by him in court of seeing him as an open chequebook because he's a footballer that earns, you know, up to £5 million a year, and she's making some quite jaw-dropping demands in court. So she wants £30,000 to build an AstroTurf football pitch in her garden because she says her daughter may be an England female footballer when she grows up, like her dad.
Her daughter's 1 year old.
But apparently, from the moment she could crawl, she looked at her football in a way that suggests that she might be a future superstar.
It's like a big garden, then.
Yes. Big garden.
He's going to AstroTurf the garden.
Paid for the big house, hasn't he, already?
So she wants £70,000 for a new car every 3 years. She wants a car for the nanny. She wants holiday. She wants everything, basically, and she wants a lot of money. He is saying to the court that because he is who he is and they're looking at his salary, they may well give her an award that they wouldn't give if he was a painter and decorator. Those are his words, not mine. And I think he's probably right, because I think the court looks at children and decides that they must live in the same style as your other children. And I'm not sure that that's, you know, such a bad thing. You know, he had children with her, he didn't have to.
Yes, yeah.
She has a responsibility too, but...
And they all should be treated the same?
The same.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like he can afford it anyway, so...
Yeah. Apparently her demands are she lives in a £2.4 million mansion and she's asked for maintenance payments, which is equivalent of a 350 grand salary. Huge demands,
it's nice work if you can get it.
Yeah, well, you don't
nice non-work. Nice non-work if you can get it.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
Norman, should we take a look at The Guardian, shall we? And this is an exclusive on there. Kemi Badenoch, who's actually the front-runner, the favourite,
yes,
the next Tory party leader, accused of being toxic.
Well, now, there are 2 aspects of the story which interest me. One is whether or not it's true, and the secondly, why has it appeared now and why has it appeared in The Guardian?
Yes, just during a leadership race.
Yes, so, I mean, the allegation is that 3 officials, unnamed, that's what I can tell, have found her behaviour so traumatising, it says here, that they felt they had no other choice but to leave. And there was a town hall meeting, town hall in inverted commas, attended by 70 staff in person and online to discuss the matter. And basically it's a character assassination piece in The Guardian, which runs through and says that she was upsetting people. She's got one-line response saying it's completely false and flagrant smear. So I suppose the issue is whether or not it's true.
So this story did break yesterday, and there was some evidence that The Guardian, to get this story, were actually approaching all of her staff individually via WhatsApp messages, emails, to try and encourage them to file a complaint of bullying and harassment. We saw this happen before when there was a front-runner with the Tories who Labour didn't like the look of. There is suggestion that Labour don't like the look of Kemi Badenoch, that she's the one that's most likely to speak to the concerns that people, especially women, have around what's going on in culture at the moment. And she's not scared to say things that need to be said. I think this is a hit job. I think the fact that it's in The Guardian speaks for itself.
It may be. What I would say is that my experience in government is there are ministers, I'm afraid, are minority ministers who do behave very badly towards civil servants, and I saw that myself, and you know, unnecessarily so, like keeping people waiting unnecessarily and stuff like that.
You see, Norman, we get to this situation. What is the difference between trying to enthuse your staff and, you know, push people on? I speak to a lot of football managers, and they say to me, I couldn't manage today. I wouldn't be allowed today. I couldn't be allowed to say what I could say. And I understand I'm not condoning this, but some people have just different ways in motivating. I mean, you ask Darryl there, or Will, or Cooper, did they ever hear a harsh word from me, you know, during the day? Are any of you ever traumatised? Right.
I think it's there are occasions when you have to be forceful, and I was forceful with my officials on occasions, and one or two things went seriously wrong, and I said to them, that was never happen again. Yes. And I said that to them. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's different from gratuitous power exploitation, when people deliberately keep civil servants waiting for no reason, stuff like that, which did also go on. Right. There are power plays that take place. Yeah.
I mean, is that your best example of being mean to someone, keeping civil servants waiting?
I think he's very good. He's got the most he's got a voice that you can know, are we serious about this? You can change the tone of your voice without ever having to say anything totally out of line. I think people would listen to you and what you say. But as you say, is that the best example? But it doesn't take much to get people to complain
nowadays. And I think this is reflective of what we were discussing in the break, Norman, about our school and education system now, where children are so wrapped in cotton wool, they're not allowed to hear anything that might upset their delicate ears.
I've got to interrupt you there, because I'm being shouted at. I'm being shouted at here, mate.
You're being bullied.
Yes, to being bullied into going to the commercial break, so I better go. if I'm OK after this, we'll be back after this short break. OK.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, to enrich us on the best cheeses and wine to buy, I'm delighted to be joined by the CEO of Inflorescence, Jacinta Madison Wilson. Jacinta, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Also, thank you so much for bringing what is
what a Sunday you're having.
of wonderful... What do we have before us?
So, we've got 3 gorgeous wines to try today. We've got an English sparkling, we've got a beautiful rosé and a dessert wine, and, of course, cheese.
Wonderful.
And paired them all beautifully.
Now, English sparkling wine has had a bit of a renaissance.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it?
To use a French word to describe English sparkling wine. It's having a bit of a moment in the sun.
Absolutely. I just think it's so exciting that this is right on our doorstep, essentially, an hour out of London, and we're around beautiful vineyards.
The chalk sort of sediment is exactly the same as the Champagne region.
Absolutely. Yeah, our soils are really similar. We use the same grape varieties a lot of the time. We make it in exactly the same way as Champagne. Our climate is like Champagne was 40 to 50 years ago. So we're really kind of drinking it blind. You almost wouldn't know that you're not drinking champagne. But it's right here on our doorstep. We can stay local now.
Absolutely marvellous. Well, we've got... what is the best order to start?
OK, well, we're going to start with sparkling, because all things in life should start with sparkling. I got married a month ago, and this was actually the... Thank you so much. This was the wine I chose to have as our first wine that we served the guests. This is from a winery called Bluebell, which is in Sussex, and I've chosen to pair this with a lovely... kind of the English version of Camembert, which is called Tunworth. Okay. It's a very classic pairing of champagne and brie. So we're kind of going to do the English version of that now. Yeah,
classic.
Absolutely. Are you ready to get stuck in?
I am so...
OK.
Hang on. Is it cheese first or wine first?
I'd have a little sip of the wine first.
Sip of the wine, bite
have
of the
a little
cheese.
bite of the cheese and then some more wine. Get it all mixed up in there.
It's like a cheese sandwich.
Exactly. Yes.
OK, here
Cheers.
we go. Cheers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, viewers and listeners. You're in the company of Norman Baker and Rennie Honderkamp with the papers. Eamonn Holmes and Ellie Costello doing... What do we do?
We're just sat having a chat, I think.
Leading breaking news story this morning, Norman. Iran's Revolutionary Guard say the Hamas leader, we're talking about the top man here, Ismail Haniyeh, has been assassinated by the Israelis.
And 3 of his sons actually were killed by an Israeli attack in Gaza not very long ago. The Israelis, I have to say, are clinically efficient at this sort of thing, whether you think it's right or not. They are very efficient. But, you know, I worry about this because the whole place in the Middle East is a tinderbox at the moment. And not only are they killing the Hamas leader, someone else will pop up. I mean, you don't destroy Hamas that way, you just generate more antagonism. But the other thing is, he was killed in Iran while he was there. And, you know, Iran is not necessarily going to be a stable country when it comes to Middle East peace, and it's also quite a powerful country, and, you know, it can be wiped away. And to actually do this in Tehran is an insult to the Iranians, and actually it's probably unnecessary to do it in that way, and dangerous, I think.
But we are seeing these targeted assassinations, aren't we? We had a strike in Beirut last night, and that took out a senior Hezbollah commander.
Exactly. I said they are very efficient at doing these things, but I don't think it's going to actually solve the problems. I mean, ultimately...
Is it stopping war? Is it starting?
It's starting. I mean, you know, ultimately, it's easy to start a war and very difficult to stop it. That's the lesson of history. And ultimately, the solution to the Middle East is a two-state solution where people respect Israel's right to exist and they respect the Palestinian state.
But
we all know that's...
But Hamas don't want a two-state.
No, they don't, and neither does the Israeli government.
So
I mean, that's the problem. The two sides don't want peace.
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about peace, we've reached it with the doctors' pay dispute, the junior doctors' pay dispute. Renee, is that it done and dusted now? 22% pay increase over 2 years.
I think it's important to know that they'd already had between 8 and 12% back paid. So, and some of this is back paid on top of this. So this is much more than 22% as well. So no, it doesn't look like it is done and dusted, because from secret WhatsApp groups chats with Rob Lawrenson, who's the co-chair of the Junior Doctors Committee of the BMA, he has been found to say this week that at the moment 22% was the best they could get, because Labour are utterly ruthless at the moment, but added, I will consider striking again with a low threshold for 2025-26 when Labour's honeymoon period ends and they make a mistake that leaves them politically vulnerable. He said that the power dynamic at the moment has swung too far for the Labour government to be successful via strikes, but there is much more opportunity in the future. There is a window of opportunity next year. So everybody, we've stolen from the pensioners to pay the junior doctors to stop the strikes, and they're going to start again next year. Of course it's not the end. And actually, it's not the end for the doctors, and every other healthcare professional, and probably civil servant, will now come forward and say, well, I want 22%. Why wouldn't you? I would.
Right.
Lost for words, Eamonn.
Well, you could get involved in it. I personally believe that doctors are underpaid, and I believe that it's a profession that we should be holding up to say, you should aspire to be this, kids. this is amazing. We need these people in our lives and we respect them. I think, you know,
medical
you pay
school
peanuts,
places,
you get monkeys.
Medical school places are 10 times oversubscribed.
Yeah,
but
children
we need
want
more
to be
homegrown
doctors.
talent, though.
No, they're oversubscribed by homegrown.
Yeah.
They're 10
but
times.
There's not
as
enough
many
places, are there?
No. So it's not about the aspiration. Children want to be doctors. My Alice at the moment wants to be a doctor. I keep telling her not to be. I told her to be a vet. Animals are nicer. And you know, they're oversubscribed.
Okay.
People want to be doctors.
Norman, tell us briefly about the Green Belt and these plans to build houses. I think we're agreed there has to be more houses built. What are the conditions then on Greenbelt?
Yes, here's a political problem. Everybody agrees there's got to be more houses. Nobody wants them in their backyard. I mean, that's the ultimate truth of the matter. And what Labour is going to do is I think it's going to drive a whole lot of house building, which doesn't occur at the moment. But is it going to be in the right place? First of all, they're going to build on some of the Green Belt. They're going to tell councils where they're going to have them, because at the moment councils are relatively autonomous when it comes to that, and they're going to be told where to have them, and that's not very democratic. But also, the question I've got is, are they the right kind of housing?
Yes.
Is it going to be houses for starter homes for people? Is it going to be people who are local? Or is it going to be 3- and 4-bedroom houses and people coming from somewhere else in the country?
See, Norman, again, why you're so wise, you've actually said this is not 1960, 1970, 1980. Needs and desires and what we want have completely changed. And you're dealing... Who do you think we're neglecting? Who should we be building for?
Young people who can't get on the housing ladder are actually the people who lose out, who are at the moment, they're waiting at the moment for their parents to die, because that's the only way they're going to get a house. And that's a shocking situation.
Yeah, right, OK. Guys, thanks very much indeed. We'll take a short break from you guys, and you'll be back in 45 minutes' time. So look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Norman. Now let's have a look at the weather with Annie Shuttleworth, because it is set to be a scorcher, but it's not going to last for very much longer.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Another hot day today, but as the humidity rises, so does the thunderstorm risk across southern areas. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry, warm and sunny day. I think the sunshine will be more widely felt across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland into this afternoon. There will still be some hazier sunshine here and there, but I think for most of us, a dry and warm day. But across the south coast, notice these showers starting to edge ever closer to the south coast. There is some uncertainty in whether we'll see any impacts from that, but there is a warning in force. Now, away from that thunderstorm risk, temperatures still climbing into the high 20s, the low 30s still possible. We could see 32 degrees again today, but into this evening it will stay quite warm, even across parts of Scotland where it has been a bit of a cooler week so far. It's eastern areas of Scotland that will be warmest. In the west, with still a little bit more in the way of cloud around, temperatures in the mid-teens here this evening. To Northern Ireland, potentially some hazy sunshine, some clouds still lingering across parts of Wales, but as I said, it's across the south coast where temperatures are the highest, still in the mid to high 20s to end this evening, where the humidity's rising and that thunderstorm risk does increase. So that's where the weather warnings in force across southeastern areas of England through this afternoon and into the evening. But overnight, that risk becomes more widespread across parts of England and Wales. Parts of South Wales and then northeastern England could see some heavy downpours, large hail and lightning as well overnight. And temperatures will be high. It's going to be a warm, potentially quite muggy night tonight quite widely. So a warm start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine across the north and west, but in the east still a risk of some very heavy downpours. The continued risk of thunderstorms and hail into Thursday afternoon as well. As that area clears away to the east, it's from the west we start to see more in the way of showers, thunderstorms as well, and it will be another very warm and humid feeling day. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs, so you'll have to continue on to the northbound M9 there. In Lancashire, the A59 is partly blocked eastbound off junction 31 of the M6 near Preston. They're dealing with a fire at a nearby farm. On Merseyside, Hartwood Road and Sussex Road in Southport remain closed for an investigation. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from Welford to Kelmarsh, causing roughly 2 miles of queues heading away from the M1 and M6 towards there. On the M25 in Kent, it's taking roughly 20 minutes in clockwise delays towards junction 5, with queues on the M26 towards there too, taking roughly 20 minutes because of roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Clashes with protesters and police last night in Southport following the fatal stabbings of those 3 children at a dance class.
The Prime Minister has said anybody involved in last night's riots will feel the full force of the law.
Bottles and bricks were thrown. A police van set alight. Nearly 40 officers injured in the violent disorder.
The families of the victims express their devastation as BB King, aged 6, Elsie Stancombe, aged 7, Alice Aguirre, aged 9, are named as the girls who have been killed.
Hamas's top political leader has been killed in Iran's capital, Tehran.
Hugh Edwards in court. The former BBC presenter is due at Westminster Magistrates today, charged with making 37 indecent images of children.
Farming crisis. The new government has been accused of ignoring rural communities because they failed to get a mention in the King's speech. That and a lot more all over the country.
Eco-protesters Just Stop Oil targets holidaymakers at Heathrow and Gatwick Airport. We'll be asking this morning, should we scrap summer holidays abroad in order to cut emissions?
A sizzling summer, so we're told. Well, 3 days.
Yeah.
Yellow heat health warnings remain in place across the UK, as yesterday turned out to be the hottest day of the year so far.
As the hot weather persists, there's a risk of thunderstorms for some of us this afternoon. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Hello there, very good morning to you. 1 minute past 8 o'clock in this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Such disquiet in Southport last night. Very, very disturbing overall when we look at Elsie and BB and Alice. And they're the important things in all of this. There are pictures over all the newspapers and the sadness and how their parents have to deal with losing them, and just the shock of it is just horrendous. Simon has said, after this week's terrible events, how can anyone even consider justifying the actions of attacking police and smashing up the streets? Which is true, but it's very complex, isn't it? This is all part of the same thing, a complete breakdown of law and order, knife crime, rioting, attacks on people and attacks on our emergency services. So there's a lot of questions to answer there, isn't there?
Yeah, and a lot of you are just despairing today in the inbox, despairing for the state of our country, despairing for the state of our world. Deborah...
I think people just want time to grieve.
Yeah.
Take it in and grieve. Yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
Deborah's been in touch saying she thinks it's the violence against women and girls that must be stopped. The police need to regain the population's respect. Clamping down on knife crime would be a good start.
OK. Well, the Prime Minister, he got the brunt of a lot of wrath yesterday as well, and but he has told people who rioted last night they will feel the full force of the law. So that's what he said. Let's go to Southport this morning. We've got two reporters there this morning. Let's go to Sophie Reaper, and we've got Will Hollis there as well.
Well, good morning to you both once again. We're back here on the scene of where that heinous attack took place. Now, our viewers who were watching yesterday will remember that at this point of the cordon yesterday, there were only a handful of bunches of flowers. I now want to show what it looks like here this morning, if we can just pan onto that. There are now hundreds of bunches of flowers here, and I just want to take some time this morning to read out a few of those messages, because I think they really convey that this is a community that is hurting but has come together. We can see one here, for example, to the three angels taken far too soon. Of course, we heard the names of those three little girls yesterday and saw their faces, incredibly heartbreaking. Such beautiful bunches of flowers here. One here, we never met you, but our thoughts and prayers are with your families and your little angels. You're in our thoughts. This one, all the way from Salford, so people coming from the Greater Manchester region, a good hour away from here in Southport, just to pay their respects and give their sympathies. I think this is a really important one. I'll just walk slightly up to see if my cameraman can show this one off. The first line, I think, here is really poignant. Why? I just don't understand why. And I think that is the question that's going to be on a lot of people's lips over the coming days and weeks as we try and work out exactly what happened. I'll just cross over here. There are balloons, of course, as well. Dozens and dozens of cuddly toys as well. Now, this one I want to point out as well. A really simple message here. Forever Swifties. Now, of course, we know those three little girls were participating in a Taylor Swift dance and yoga class at the start of their summer holidays. You can just imagine it was carefree. There would have been laughter filling the room. Where we also know that the fundraiser that has been set up is now, at the last count, I believe it was just over £270,000 has been raised in memory of those little girls, but also for the others who were injured in the attack. But so many, the heart of the nation bleeds for you. As we keep coming down, an amazing drawing just there, if we can show this one, done by a child in the local area. Sweet dreams, we love you. I mean, yesterday we saw so many children here coming to lay flowers. This isn't just adults that will be affected by this, of course. This is people's families. This is a community in grieving, and children will come. I imagine that many of these cuddly toys will have belonged to children in the community, but they wanted to contribute. They wanted to lay down something personal that belonged to them. Can see a couple here from Leeds, even from over the Pennines, people coming from far and wide to pay their respects and their sympathies. Now, this next one is something that really tugged at my heartstrings this morning, Eamonn and Ellie. Here we can see some angel wings that have been laid down, some children's angel wings there, fairy wings, 3 packs there for the 3 little girls who gained their wings after such a horrific attack. It really does break your heart when you read it. incredibly emotional this morning, reading those messages and seeing just the sheer volume of messages and flowers here. And it's the same at the other end of the cordon, that perhaps even more down there. You can just tell that this is a community that has been truly affected by this horrendous attack that took those lives and put those other children and the 2 adults in such a critical condition. We're still waiting, of course, to hear about their conditions over the coming days. But yes, just really heartbreaking, but also moving, and it almost restores a little bit of your faith after the scenes from last night to see such beauty here at such a time of heartbreak.
Absolutely heartbreaking, Sophie, and to see that outpouring of grief and emotion in that community, you can't even imagine how it's been affected.
Before we go to Will Hollis, though, thanks, Sophie. I think we should highlight the woman in whose name all of this was, Taylor Swift, and she actually released a statement. What did she have to say?
Yeah, she's released a statement on Instagram saying the horror of yesterday's attack in Southport is washing over me continuously, and I'm just completely in shock. The loss of life and innocence, the horrendous trauma inflicted on everyone who was there, the families and the first responders. They were just little kids at a dance class. I'm at a complete loss for how to ever convey my sympathies to these families. And her fans, since then, have raised more than £230,000 in an online fundraiser for the community.
You know, and when you see Taylor Swift and you think, you know, for this to be done, her name associated with it forever, it's an awful burden.
And those little girls enjoying her music and dancing to her music.
Totally,
it will break her heart.
Yeah. And
it's almost this outpouring of grief, this outpouring of emotion. We've just seen it from Sophie, we just heard it from Taylor Swift there. And the clean-up operation taking place this morning, it's the good of humanity. But we saw the ugly side of it all yesterday, didn't we? The scene of the riots last night. Will Hollis is there for us. What happened last night, Will?
Yes, good morning, both. The soundtrack of summer nights here in Southport this week has been punctuated by the sound of police sirens and helicopters. This morning, the streets of Southport are punctuated by the sound of street sweepers and diggers. And just to give you a bit of a sense of what's happening here in Southport is, after some people tried to tear the streets apart, local people are trying to put it back together. You can see that most people, instead of arming themselves with bricks, like is what we saw last night, people are arming themselves with shovels and brooms and brushes. Where we are right now is exactly where this disorder happened, violent disorder. Over here on the right-hand side, this is the mosque, which was really the centre of it. You can see that all of the windows are boarded up. The fence panels have been torn apart and people's vehicles have been smashed. Just on the other side of this fence, there was a police van on fire last night as hundreds of rioters that the police have said are mainly from out of town. One MP described them as violent thugs. They tore apart the streets and threw bricks at the police officers. The North West Ambulance Service this morning have said in a statement that they treated 39 people overnight, and they said all of them were police officers. We saw police officers that didn't have any riot gear walking away from the violent disorder with blood covering their faces. The scenes were like something that I have never seen before in my, what we'll describe as a short career so far as a journalist. But I don't think people have seen anything like this on British streets for quite some time. This is a community that was the centre of tensions and boiling points that erupted last night. All of this, the authorities would say, is inspired by speculation after the tragic killings of 3 very young girls aged 9, 7 and 6, Alice, Elsie and Bibi. And this is at a time when a community is trying to make sense of something so awful, an addition that just makes it all the more confusing and I think upsetting this morning and last night. Eamonn and Ellie, but you can see here that the people here are the people of Southport that were probably up at the crack of dawn this morning Last night, when I was trying to drive back to where we were staying here in Southport, it took a lot longer than I imagined a normal journey because it was police roadblock after police roadblock. I've honestly never seen so many police driving around on the streets, blocking roads, flashing lights and sirens, but also so many roads that have been barricaded off with wheelie bins that were set on fire, and many of those wheelie bins that have been set on fire were being extinguished by local people with garden hoses saying you can't come through this way, you need to turn around. A Section 60 dispersal order remains in place until around 8 o'clock tonight, and the police say they will be targeting the people that caused this violent disorder here in Southport.
It's such a beautiful day, such a terrible, terrible story. Will, thank you very much indeed for conveying that to us.
But how heartwarming to see all those people out with their brooms, and thank you, Will, for bringing that to us.
That's community, isn't it?
That is community, you're right, yeah.
That's for Elsie and Bibi and Alice. We're talking about farming now, and big reaction to this. Pam says we are presently in the process of selling the family farm. We cannot keep making losses. Around here, everyone's growing wildflowers. Now, you do that and apparently you get grants for that. It pays more to grow wildflowers than food. There is going to be a real shortage of food in the near future. But politicians, they just believe magically it'll sort itself out. Magically we'll get staff from somewhere. Who do you get to work on farms? Why would they work on farms? Dougie Beattie joins us now, and you're concentrating, Dougie. We're going to see a report from you from Northern Ireland, but this is not about Northern Ireland, or not totally about Northern Ireland.
Incomes are down throughout the UK.
What would I expect to earn as an average farm worker?
Well, a farmer's average age is now 60 years of age, and
so a guy that owns the farm
is averaging 60 years of age, and many of those are now down to about £11,500 a year as a wage. In Northern Ireland, they lost 47.6% of their income. I mean, how would you feel if I walked up to you and said, we're going to cut your wages in half? They still have, although farming is a business, they still live on the site. The families with them on the site, many times 3 generations living on the one site, all expecting an income from that farm. And when it's split so badly, £11,500 is what we're looking at for some of the arable farmers. They're being hit particularly hard.
Mate. It's impossible. That's the background to what we're talking about. Let's have a look at Dougie's report.
We're down now to the average crop farmer income last year was predicted to be 11,500. So that's about 1/5 of the average household income in Northern Ireland. So we're working for double the hours for very, very little income, and that's not sustainable.
Richard Orr is a farmer that is now working for much less than minimum wage, and points to imports on certain markets and higher input costs.
Our input costs drastically rose at the same time when crop value rose a couple of years ago, and that has been very slow to come down. Our fertiliser, our energy, our electricity, our fuel. So that knock-on effect of the reduction now in prices for the product we're selling. Last year was a very poor year for crop yield due to the weather, and yet we still have high input costs, probably 50–60% more than what they usually were.
President of the Ulster Farmers Union, William Irvine, has seen many struggling farms and has concerns over food security.
Every business has bad years. Now agriculture is surviving on the occasional reasonable year. For too often we either losing money or just scraping by, and it really puts into question the sustainability of our industry, and that puts into question the food security of the United Kingdom.
Over the last 24 months, retail prices have risen by over 18%, and farmers insist they are not profiting from the record retail numbers.
The consumer doesn't need the food to rise anymore. We need the food price that we receive at the bottom to be more equally shared, and we can manage that far better. The guys in the middle are taking too much, and they know they can get away with it.
In 2019, Theresa May agreed to net zero by statute, and there is a lack of knowledge or joined-up thinking around costly fertilisers.
I suppose for us as a crop farmer, one of the frustrating things around the Agriculture Minister's desire to cut methane, cut emissions, put restrictions on the use of slurries and organic manures. To me, they're a valuable fertiliser that we can drastically use in the arable industry, in the crop industry. We can take it from a livestock farmer. We can be part of the solution.
Within the 340 million income on farms, 298 is from government subsidies. Is it now time we looked at the possibility of open markets with a level playing fields on regulations?
That's a question for society. If, as businesses, we have to be viable, we need money in our pockets to buy the seed to plant for next year. We need to be able to grow our crops to feed our cattle next winter. So we either need sustained, viable support from society, or we need more income from the marketplace. So, but either way, we cannot continue to function at a loss.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Northern Ireland.
So, Dougie, just to emphasise again, this is about the whole of the UK we're talking here. This is a criticism of the new government that we've got because the King's speech, farming wasn't mentioned at all. There was nothing about farming.
There was nothing in it. And once more, this new government seems to be wanting to bring us back towards European legislation and regulation. That's a different story in Northern Ireland because, of course, we're caught inside that. But what you're talking about in Europe is we have seen riots, we have seen roads ploughed, we have seen farmers up in arms because they are facing exactly the same
all
issues.
Those tractor protests and things like that. And so we're all going to join up with the same problem. What are folks saying, Ellie?
Sue says, interesting discussion this morning. I'm not a farmer, but I get it. If I can get it, why can't the government? Why have we stopped supporting our farmers? What would happen to this country if we had to go to war and we had to support ourselves? I despair for the future of our children and our grandchildren. And self-sufficiency, which is what Sue's talking about there, is so important, isn't it, with the state of our world, the way it is at the moment?
The country to be self-sufficient, feed itself.
And feed itself.
Absolutely, and at this minute in time, people will tell you we're over 50% self-sufficient. I would think that's more under 50%. Back in the 80s, we were 80% self-sufficient.
Just in the 80s?
Just in the 80s, we were 80% self-sufficient. And then we started bringing in so much food from abroad, highly processed food, it must be said. And if you look at our own health since the 80s, you know, we've seen obesity rising, we've seen diabetes, heart disease, all rising. And it is because of what we are eating. And that is causing real financial problems as well inside the UK's markets. But if you look at even our fertiliser, you talk about self-sufficiency. You know, Birmingham used to be called Milkies because the sky was very milky because they were producing that much nitrogen in it. We exported that. Now Belarus and Russia are two of the biggest producers of nitrogen. And that nitrogen has to travel across from there. And we've seen the effect of that in the Ukraine war because fertiliser went from £300 a tonne overnight to £1,200 a tonne. And that is what is playing out here. And we're seeing the financial kickback of that. But of course, farmers have to have money in the bank to re-sow and re-plough fields. Farmers are asset rich, but income poor. And that when we see the weather at the start of the year, that 3 months of really wet weather, many of those crops, part of that report was actually from outside Durham, and they were having to re-plough the winter barley back into the fields because it was destroyed. And barley anywhere north isn't for human consumption. That's more animal feed. But from 2015 till now, the price of animal feed has risen by 100%.
I think that this hurts. This is bad. I don't think the agricultural community have people mainstream who speak up for them. I don't even think programmes like Country File are about the country, really. They're about a lifestyle. They're about, what are you going to do on a Sunday afternoon? What are you going to visit and all that sort of... Would I be right in that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the way football focus is not about football these days. It's unbelievable. Right, so bottom line is, if we're to save farming... And basically, when you think about it, why would you want to run a farm? Why would I want to be involved in a farm on 11 grand a year that you're going to take away from
work.
Terribly hard work. Terribly hard work. So who cares? And what's going to be done?
Well, it's 24/7. You have to remember when you're on a farm, even getting holidays, milking, organising the milking of cattle, etc. That is a complete nightmare for any farmer because he just can't leave the cattle and go away.
Aye.
But, you know, we're looking at this Labour government now. The mandate of the Tories, of course, ran out. All four nations of farming are now in discussions with the Labour government, deciding what subsidies and how those subsidies are going to work out. So over the last period, that last mandate, there was masses of the subsidies that were taken away, but they were given if you put your land into greening, growing flowers, growing trees.
For country file.
For country file, yes, it's correct. And the knock-on effect of that is the likes of in Scotland, northeast of England, there's huge amounts of tenant farmers.
Yeah.
They're now losing their land because the owners of that land are getting more for planting it in trees.
Yeah. What a conundrum, what a problem. Where will it go? It's heading in the wrong direction, certainly. Dougie, thanks for raising it today. And if you want to have a say in this, you know what to do. You get in touch with us and you fire off that email address. There it is there, gbnews.com/your say. Thank you very much. Dougie, appreciate it.
Dougie.
Thank you very much indeed.
A quick one from Douglas, who says the only things growing in my area are wind and solar farms, which is a testament to what Dougie has just been talking about.
That's another story, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, at 23 minutes past 8, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has said he and one of his bodyguards were assassinated in Tehran. No one has yet to claim responsibility, but Israel has previously vowed to kill him and other Hamas leaders following the October 7th attack. Earlier we spoke to the Evening Standard's defence editor Robert Fox. He had this to say.
He's a big loss to the negotiation process for a ceasefire in Gaza and a possible release of the hostages. He was the point man because he was the political leader of Hamas.
In Paris, Japan leads the medal table going into day 5 of the Games. It's on 7 gold medals. Great Britain did win another gold last night in the pool. We're in 7th place overall. They won the 4x200-metre freestyle relay, leading from start to finish. The US have come in second so far, winning silver, and Australia sealed the bronze.
The former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards is due to appear in court this morning. He's charged with making indecent images of children. The 62-year-old is alleged to have committed the 3 offences between December 2020 and April 2022. The broadcaster is accused of having had 37 photographs on WhatsApp, including 6 of the most serious category.
It's set to be another scorcher today. Let's get the details with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another hot day today, but as the humidity rises, so does the thunderstorm risk across southern areas. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry, warm and sunny day. I think the sunshine will be more widely felt across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland into this afternoon. There will still be some hazier sunshine here and there, but I think for most of us, a dry and warm day. But across the south coast, notice these showers starting to edge ever closer to the south coast. There is some uncertainty in whether we'll see any impacts from that, but there is a warning in force. Now, away from that thunderstorm risk, temperatures still climbing into the high 20s, the low 30s still possible. We could see 32 degrees again today, but into this evening it will stay quite warm, even across parts of Scotland where it has been a bit of a cooler week so far. It's eastern areas of Scotland that will be warmest. In the west, with still a little bit more in the way of cloud around, temperatures in the mid-teens here this evening. To Northern Ireland, potentially some hazy sunshine, some clouds still lingering across parts of Wales, but as I said, it's across the south coast where temperatures are the highest, still in the mid to high 20s to end this evening, where the humidity's rising and that thunderstorm risk does increase. So that's where the weather warnings in force across southeastern areas of England through this afternoon and into the evening. But overnight, that risk becomes more widespread across parts of England and Wales. Parts of South Wales and then northeastern England could see some heavy downpours, large hail and lightning as well overnight. And temperatures will be high. It's going to be a warm, potentially quite muggy night tonight quite widely. So a warm start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine across the north and west, but in the east still a risk of some very heavy downpours. A continued risk of thunderstorms and hail into Thursday afternoon as well. As that area clears away to the east, it's from the west we start to see more in the way of showers, thunderstorms as well, and it will be another very warm and humid feeling day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, some good news this morning. There is still plenty of time to enjoy a massive win this summer, £30,000 in tax-free cash in the Great British Giveaway.
It is massive, and you could be our next big winner.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're taking a break. We're going to ask you, maybe you're heading on holiday, maybe you're not, maybe you object to it, maybe you think, well, that's what you do, but should you do it? Talking about that next.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award. But he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, you may have seen the reaction this week to the Just Stop Oil activists. 8 of them were arrested at Gatwick after trying to stop passengers getting on planes at departure gates.
Yes, we also saw them spraying the departure boards, didn't we, at Heathrow Airport yesterday with orange paint. As we're asking this morning, is it time that we scrap holidays abroad in order to save on carbon emissions? That's this morning's debate.
And it's not as simple or straightforward as we may think. We all have, or should we all have, a moral responsibility on all of this. Joining us now, the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donna McCarthy, who says cutting down on summer sunshine isn't a bad thing. And former Conservative MP Neil Parish, who thinks the idea is plain crazy. Donica, first of all, to you, my friend, I think you could look at you and say, what are you talking about? Get into the real world. And the real world dictates now that everybody can travel whenever the heck they want. It isn't even that expensive. What is the damage we're doing to the planet, and why are you so disturbed? You don't travel, I should point out. You haven't been on a plane in how long?
I haven't flown for a holiday for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Because once I realised the impact was, I just couldn't do it. My conscience couldn't do it. I think a lot of people don't understand how big carbon emissions of flights are. So take Heathrow, where the protest was. Heathrow Airport is Britain's largest source of carbon emissions. 20 million tonnes of carbon. Now, what does a tonne of carbon mean? Most people don't know what it means. 20 million tonnes of carbon is more emissions than every single household in Britain's electricity. So we would have to turn off everything in our households for a year to save the emissions from Heathrow. Another example of how bad it is a family of 4 flying to Disney World for one holiday would emit 10 tonnes of carbon. That's 20 years of their electricity for the
20
household.
years.
So we have to act on climate.
Just before we bring Neil in, what does that actually mean? So, I mean, you could be cutting emissions or having emissions, whatever, but big deal. What does it mean? What does it do? How bad is that?
Well, it's very simple physics. If you add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, it traps heat, the planet gets warmer. Every month for the last 13 months, Eamonn, have been the hottest month in human history. The graph is terrifying. We've got to act really fast. So the carbon emissions for flights is a very easy thing to do, and it's a patriotic thing to do. The tourism industry in Britain costs Britain £26 billion in losses because we spend more abroad than others spend here. So I would argue 2 things. It's the right thing to do to cut your carbon emissions by holidaying in Britain, but it's a patriotic thing because it helps Britain's economy.
OK. Neil, what do you make of it?
Neil?
Yes, I mean, I'm not somebody who's a sort of complete killjoy and wants to stop everybody ever going on a foreign holiday again. But I think we need to, it's not a zero-sum game. And I think we've got to be conscious that when we do fly, we are emitting we're creating pollution and carbon. And so therefore, you know, I think let's be sort of also, you know, we can holiday in this country, as has been said, and that would be good for the economy. Also, you can go by electric train, you know, across the channel. And most of the French trains and Italian trains and others are electric. So all of these things can be done. Also, I'm worried, you see, as a farmer, because we need to produce food and we also are trying to reduce our carbon emissions through, you know, what we feed our cattle and less emissions when we till our soils. But we do need food. And of course, the trouble is a lot of the airlines now say, oh, we'll just buy up some farms and we'll plant a few more trees and this is all wonderful. Well, no, it's not really. And so just be conscious. I mean, I wouldn't go as far to ban everybody from going ever on a plane again, but I think people get on a plane too easily, and I think they can think, well, they can mitigate it some other way. Very difficult to do that, and it's much better with air quality and pollution not to produce the pollution in the first place than it is to actually gobble it up again. And like I said, I am worried that we'll import a lot of our food because we will, in the end, not have enough land here for food production because we've used it for many other things. So
well,
it's got
you
to
know,
be
we've been talking about that on the programme this morning, so thank you for contributing to that one. But Neil hits upon another very interesting point here, Donica, and we were talking about the weather situation, because people feel, do you not think they feel, Ellie, that they need a holiday because the weather's so lousy?
That's true, yes.
Yeah, and the weather's lousy. One of the reasons is because we're messing up the climate.
Well, one of the interesting things Neil referred to is agriculture. If we don't look after the climate, a broken climate equals no farmers. Farmers in the UK this year are suffering because of the wettest winter ever in England. So farmers like Neil are actually on the front line of the climate threat. So that's why and he made another point about how many people feel trigger happy with a flight. The first thing, simplest thing the government could do is introduce a frequent flyer tax. That does not impose a tax on the single holiday a working family takes. A frequent flyer tackles the people who take 10, 20 flights a year. The reason why Heathrow is absolutely rammed packed with people is because there are people there taking 8, 9, 10 flights a year. 50% of the UK population, Eamonn and Ellie, take no flights a year.
50%
take no flights. But we have 550 million flights are taken from Britain. So on the rest of the population, taking on average 10 flights each.
Yeah.
We've got to tackle these selfish, rich frequent flyers. And the money, the wonderful thing about a frequent flyer tax, I think hopefully Neil would agree with this, is a frequent flyer tax takes money from the rich and funds rural transport. Rural transport has been decimated over the last 10 years. They've cut the 50% of bus routes, and the government yesterday cut the programme to restore 44 train lines to rural communities.
Yes.
That's just £500 million. We could get that money easily from taxing Heathrow.
Neil, what do you make? A frequent flyer tax? Would you support that?
I think it's not a bad idea. I think we'd have to be a little bit careful whether you could limit it just to one flight, perhaps 2 flights a year. But I think after that, then yes, because I think people you're very often very conscious of being green until they sort of go on holiday, and then they seem to sort of divorce themselves. I've got a daughter that she's very green, but when she suddenly wants to go on holiday, off she goes on a plane, and I'm always teasing her. I'm not sure that this is quite so green as you thought it was, Harriet. But that's the issue. I think we sometimes divorce the two, and I think the government will also have to work out the economy as well, you see, because the trouble with Heathrow and all of these airports, they say it's very good for the economy to have this. Well, yes, it is in some ways, but in other ways it is causing damage. I think if we could actually get people to have more holidays in this country, as been said, that would help the economy wider than just, and of course, if you look at the air quality, I drive into London on a Sunday evening to come and do GB News with Mark Dolan because I can't get a train back, late at night. You see air quality. You see we have reduced the speed on the road due to air quality as you drive past Heathrow. Well, that's right. I got no problem with that. But, of course, a lot of the problem with Heathrow in the first place is the aircraft. So, as we're cleaning up cars, getting more electric cars, we need to also clean up planes as well as restrict them as well. Yes. So a lot of work to be done, I reckon.
Neil, there is a lot of work to be done. The clock has beaten us this morning, but it is fascinating. You come at this from opposite sides, but there's big agreement between the both of you, which I think is very, very heartening. And, Donica, I used to talk to you and I used to think, I commute from Ireland to my job in England, and I would say, well, what do you do with people like that? You've got to look at this. I say this against myself. I don't do it anymore, but...
people commute, don't they?
People commute.
Yeah, people commute by plane, and that's just insane. And that's why the frequent flyer tax is necessary to stop that. But as I say, the positive is it means that rural people might have a bus service. Think of the pensioner living in rural Shropshire, and 50% of the bus routes cut. Restoring them would be such a positive.
It would be such a positive. I've got to get the newspapers in. We've got to do that. Guys, goodbye to both of you. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Donica. Thank you very much. Food for thought there for everybody. What are your thoughts? Let us know this morning. You know what to do to get in touch. Have your say.
Still to come, a sizzling summer's day ahead. We're going to be heading to the seaside town of Weston-super-Mare. That's next.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at Junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs. On the M80 in Glasgow, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between Junction 16 and 17 from Craighall to St George's Cross, with queues from Junction 12 at Carmodel Road. On the M6 in Lancashire, the southbound exit at Junction 31 near Preston's closed. They're dealing with a fire at a nearby farm. The A59 is partly blocked eastbound, there causing queues. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there are northbound queues after traffic was stopped when a vehicle caught fire between Junctions 5 and 6 towards Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking roughly 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 again this morning because of roadworks, and on the M25 towards there, it's taking around a quarter of an hour from Junction 4 at Orpington. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tell you where we're going now. We're going live now to Weston-super-Mare. Let's go. Jack Carson there for us this morning. Jack, out and about experiencing the weather, of course.
Yep, it's hot today, but how long will it stay? Jack, how's...
Well, fingers crossed, it's going to be at least for the next 24 hours, of course. There have been, in the last 24 hours, the Met Office issuing yellow weather warnings for thunderstorms. For today, it's more in the southeast, but covering large parts of the country overnight and Thursday and throughout the day as well. But that's because of this huge band of high pressure that we've had that's come and covered across the country, which has given us this glorious weather as the sun starts to beam down here in Weston-super-Mare. I mean, you know, this is one of those seaside towns that has tens of thousands of visitors every year. It's a huge, benefactor from, of course, the tourism industry in the UK. You know, across an average to the economy every year, the tourist industry is around £106 billion. And when you actually look into those figures specifically, and you get into the coastal towns, and you look at the impact that small and medium-sized businesses impact in coastal towns, they provide around £3 billion to the economy. So when the sun is out like it is today, it's important, of course, that we get to our local coast. I mean, I've come from Birmingham, of course. This is the nearest beach to Birmingham, so there'll be probably hundreds of Brummies that are also coming to Weston-super-Mare today. Of course, you've got loads of different attractions here, whether it is the pier pier that was built first in 1904. You've got donkey rides, you can do water sports. So, of course, you were talking there about flying as well. And that's, of course, you know, one of the things that staycations have been huge over the past couple of years as well, of course. You know, 40% of people took a staycation last year, but that figure's dropped to around 27% this year. So people may be taking fewer staycations, but of course that really matters to places like this, where you've got small ice cream shops, or whether you've got, you know, the long beaches as well, and the seafood and everything as well. So a beautiful day set to be here in Weston-super-Mare.
Jack, you've just done it. The thing that sold me was the ice cream. Ice cream.
That's what you go to the seaside for.
Oh, I don't. Thanks, Jack. Thanks very much indeed, Weston-super-Mare. But ice cream, I mean, if you want to sum up seaside to me and holidays and the national food of Ireland, ice cream.
What is it about the ice cream in Ireland?
Well,
it's so fresh.
A lot of it's Italian.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, see, Italian migrants came to build the churches in Ireland, and that's why the churches are so good, and they, you know, because they all look like Roman churches.
Yeah, honestly, if you get yourself over to Ireland, have an ice cream. I don't know what they put in it. It's so fresh.
So fresh.
So nice.
So nice. So nice. Norman Baker and Rennie Honderkamp, they're so nice, or maybe not, depending on what the news is they're talking about. And that's going to come next. See you after this.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Karen Stevenson was born in Stoke-on-Trent and read music at Trinity College, Cambridge. She's played cello with many of the world's great orchestras under the batons of some of the most renowned conductors, and she joins me now to discuss her career and the importance of music in education. Tell me about that. What is your role at the Philharmonia?
My role at the Philharmonia is number 2 cello. I've been there for about 15 years. Sometimes I play number 1 cello as well, which is a great opportunity for me.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I often think what a very difficult life it is to be a professional musician.
I make a living out of it. It is definitely possible. Yeah, we don't really like it when we get into a taxi and someone says, "What's your day job?" Because we work really hard.
I was kind of making the opposite point. Not that you'd also have a day job. I think the perfection that is required for a professional musician is extraordinary. On the whole, we are intolerant of mistakes in classical music.
Yes, we are.
And I just wondered whether you don't become very frustrated with a world in which everything else is imperfect.
You are only as good as your last concert, Michael. That's how it feels. It is a lot of pressure. Sometimes we will say, OK, a pint for every wrong note or something, but if depending on the piece of music, that could be quite dangerous.
How many hours a day do you have to practice?
You have to practice much more when you're younger, I think, when you're learning. I think this is really important. And when you're at music college. I'm a busy, I'm travelling, I have a family. I can't practice as much as I used to, so you have to rely on your experience. What I really wanted to say is that there's been a lot of fear-mongering about classical music being in decline and it not being relevant. And I really wanted to say that I don't think that's the case. Our audiences have increased. They're the highest they've been in 10 years.
The People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'd just like to make an announcement for those of you watching and listening. Dr. Rennie Honderkamp and Norman Baker standing by to review the papers. And I hope I did that in a way that I would be employed by the train companies to do that, because, Norman, we're going to hear a lot fewer announcements in years to come.
If only. I mean, the story in the Telegraph here is that they're going to change the terminology from this train terminates here to this train ends its journey here, which I suppose is OK as far as it goes.
Why terminate is seen as a
difficult word.
A difficult or an abrupt.
Not everybody understands terminate, apparently. So
stupid.
So this is what they're changing. I mean, I can understand for tourists, maybe it makes some sense. And certainly, you look at when you go to London Underground stations, you put your ticket in and it doesn't work. It says seek assistance, and it probably should say ask for help. However, what I wanted to say, maybe
This started in gymnastics when they decided that the asymmetrical bars needed to be called the uneven bars, so that people could understand. This is just a reflection of our dumbed-down education
It is.
and how stupid people are getting, I'm afraid.
However, can I make the point that there are far too many announcements? This is an obsession of mine. You go on trains and there are announcements. We recommend you go and inspect a safety card at the end of the carriage. You know, whoever does that, whoever gets up to inspect a safety car,
person, isn't it? They push that.
What is it there for? And all this say it's sorted nonsense. It comes out every 10 minutes in the train. We're just full of announcements that don't need to be there and irritate people. Whereas the announcements you do want, like you change at this particular platform and the train you want is on another platform. That sort of thing's useful. But there's so much garbage on our trains.
Well, you don't get the helpful information, do you? I was at a station the other day and there were no trains running anywhere, but I had to get all the way into the station to read that on the board. There was nobody talking to you and giving you information.
But you can read the safety card.
I can read,
1 in 3 people, Doctor, are saying that university is a waste of time and cash. That's the perception now.
Hallelujah. It's about time. You know, Tony Blair introduced this, that more than 50% of students ought to go to university. They've gone to university, they've come out with a useless degree, they can't get a job, and they've got a massive debt hanging around their necks. We need to accept that some people are fit for university for jobs that really need it, lawyers, doctors, that kind of thing. But there are other tools that we really need people to have now. We are desperate for builders. Apparently now, if you become a plumber or a bricklayer, you're going to be on at least £120,000 to £150,000 a year.
Yeah.
We need to send these kids to apprenticeships so that they can make a good living for themselves and build the houses that we need.
I totally agree with that. And we should have got rid of technical colleges back in the 90s. Because actually, the idea that everybody should go to university is a way of saying to people at technical college, you're a second-class person. You're not good enough to go to university. And that's not at all how it should be. And actually, if you go to mainland Europe, places like France, they value plumbers, they value electricians and so on. They see them as an important part of the society. But we don't over here in the same way.
I'm a useful a person to you because I look and I think I can do nothing except talk. My kids were asked in school, what does your dad do for a living? And they simply said, he talks to people. And that's basically what I do. There's nothing I can do with these hands, and I feel really bad about that.
Well, I mean, some people can do things with their hands and others can't. I mean, I'm quite useless in the same way as you are, Eamonn, on that front. But in a sense, it doesn't matter. We all have our specialities. So long as you recognise our limitations, it's fine. But what I do think is that we shouldn't say that people pushing bits of paper around the city are worth more than people who actually mend things.
But we do still have that snobbery, don't we?
We do. But look at COVID. I mean, who was it kept the country going during COVID? It wasn't the guys in the city with bits of paper. It was normal people.
You've got to blame employers for this. If you try and get a job at Tesco's or Marks and Spencer's or whatever, you've got to fill out forms and take aptitude tests beyond belief.
Yeah, the society has changed now, where we expect things from people for a job that they don't need. We need people to just be able to do the job.
And nurses, matrons and stuff in
well,
hospitals.
nurses shouldn't. Project 2000, sending them to university, big problem.
Yeah.
Norman,
you preferred it when they were learning practically on the wards, didn't you?
Norman, here's something that I'm going to believe in. It's in the Star today, but there's a lot of sense in it. Fish aren't as stupid as we think because they have fantastic memories. I think all animals communicate. They communicate with each other and they can communicate with us. We just haven't learnt how to do it very well. And I know this from talking to a woman who talks to apes. She's the chief primate person in the whole world.
Yes.
And she has this language. So she walks up to a chimpanzee and goes, blah, 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 and it talks back to her. It's absolutely amazing to watch.
I think we don't understand the capabilities of animals generally, the fact that they perhaps know earthquakes are going to come, the way they migrate around the world and come out the same place. All these tricks they've got, if you like, which we don't have as human beings. We might have had them years, decades ago, centuries ago.
I have
we haven't got them now.
And they definitely know me over anyone else.
Really?
So if you went down to my pond, they wouldn't come anywhere near. If I went down and talked to them, they'd come up to the top.
And you talk to them?
Of course.
What would you say?
I just feed them, ask them how they are. They're huge. They're this big.
Oh.
What is that? What sort of animals?
Koi carp.
Koi carp. Fish.
Fish.
Anyway, the story, Eamonn, in the stars, that the goldfish have got long memories, not this nonsense that they all forget things.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I remember my kids having fish and I was changing the bowl and shouting at them for not doing it, and why was it always left to me? And I simply turned on the wrong tap. It was full of hot, scalding.
Oh, dear.
And they all went...
And you cooked the fish?
They curled up like that, and that was the end of that.
You know you are going to get hate mail for this, don't you?
No, well, it's awful. I'm a murderer. Right. So that's it. That's it from our newspaper review. Thank you very much indeed, Norman and Rennie. Appreciate it. Back after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at Junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs. On the M8 in Glasgow, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between Junction 16 and 17 from Craighall to St George's Cross. There are queues from Junction 12 at Cumbernauld Road with a report of a breakdown in the queue. On the M6 in Lancashire, the southbound exit at Junction 31 near Preston's closed with a fire at a nearby farm. The A59 is partly blocked eastbound there, causing queues. In Derbyshire, the A617 is closed eastbound from Hasland to Temple Normanton after an accident with queues towards Chesterfield. In Norfolk, the A148 is partly blocked by an accident at Fakenham, causing delays. On the M25 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in clockwise queues from Junction 4 at Orpington to 5 because of roadworks. Queues on the M26 towards the M25. They're taking roughly a quarter of an hour. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GB News.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Clashes with protesters and police last night in Southport following the stabbings of those 3 little girls at a dance class.
We've been covering this throughout the programme this morning. The Prime Minister said anyone involved in the riots will feel the full force of the law.
Bottles and bricks were thrown, a police van set alight, and nearly 40 officers were injured in violent disorder.
Families of the victims have expressed their devastation as Bibi, Elsie and Alice are named as the girls who have been killed.
Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Iran's capital, Tehran.
Hugh Edwards is, or will be, in court this morning, very shortly, we believe. The former BBC presenter is due in the next half hour at Westminster Magistrates, charged with making 37 indecent images of children. We'll be there live.
A sizzling summer, yellow heat health warnings remain in place across parts of the UK, as yesterday was the hottest day of the year, and there's more to come today.
As the hot weather persists, there's a risk of thunderstorms for some of us this afternoon. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
The time, 1 minute past 9 o'clock. You're very welcome. We're with you until 9:30. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. Well, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has warned rioters in Southport that they are going to feel the full force of the law after the violence that we saw last night. There was also a vigil held in Southport for those 3 little girls that were killed in that stabbing attack on Monday.
It's all very, very emotional. There was a lot of violence last night, and reporting for us, Sophie Reaper this morning, who has conveyed just how emotional all of this is. We've got Will Hollis at the scene of the riot, but we go to Sophie first to what is a beautiful day. Look at that, but such a sad feeling and atmosphere. And who would have predicted what happened last night, Sophie?
Absolutely not. I think we were here yesterday and the community were coming together. The atmosphere was a sad one, but one of strength and community. And obviously what happened last night was really quite shocking. I mean, we're back here on the scene of the attack. About 100 metres that way over my shoulder, you can see that mobile police station. Just beyond that is the space where that Taylor Swift dance and yoga class was taking place when that perpetrator entered with a knife and began to attack the children and the teachers at that class. Now, as I say, we're back here on the scene where yesterday there were perhaps a handful of bunches of flowers and messages, whereas now there are hundreds and hundreds here. And I just want to show you a few more of those messages if I can. There's one really poignant poem here that I noticed earlier, and it says, "Those we love don't go away, they walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still missed, and forever dear. We are all heartbroken, and as a community we stand beside you." And I just think that just really encapsulates the mood here, that they are heartbroken, but they're going to do what they can to support those families who are going through the worst time that you could ever imagine. And on that, if we can show the fence here and along, there have been some cards and leaflets left for the Samaritans and information for victims of crime. That is a big thing. You know, this kind of thing really can take a toll on people's mental health, on their emotional health. Not just those who have been directly affected, who may have had children or loved ones in that building when the attack took place, but those people in the community who will know those children, know those families, close friends, loved ones. This will be incredibly hard for them. If we walk down just a little bit more, you can see also there are some candles that people have been lighting. This one we could maybe take a look at. So this is from Intelligent Scaffolding, but there's one from, there's so many from different businesses. Sending all our love and prayers to everyone involved. Keep dancing with the angels. R.I.P. beautiful girls. All our love from everyone at Intelligent Scaffolding. But like I say, there's so many from different businesses, and I think we can obviously in a second go down to Will Hollis, where there's local residents and local businesses coming together as part of that clean-up where the events of last night took place.
So emotional and heartbreaking, Sophie, to see the outpouring of grief from that community. Thank you for bringing that to us. And Will, such ugly scenes of violence last night, but this morning it's the very best of humanity, isn't it? We can see people behind you with brooms clearing up their streets.
Yes, quite a noisy street here in Southport, probably very different to what it would be usually on a bright, sunny summer's day like this in a residential area. This is the clean-up operation the morning after the night before, and there are street sweepers going along, lots of people arming themselves with brooms when other people were choosing to pick up bricks. It's very clear from the local MP, Patrick Thurley, as well as the police, that they think that the riots last night and the people that incited the violence and disorder are not from Southport, and that's what we've been hearing from people on the ground as well today, people who have been coming from the local area, who last night on social media saw what was happening and said, this isn't what we want our town to be thought about as, and so they've been down here, local companies as well as local people chipping in essentially to clean up. What we saw last night was bricks flying, being thrown at police. We've got a small piece of rubble here. A lot of it's been cleaned up in the last half an hour, 45 minutes. But this is from what I can only imagine is a piece of broken pavement or slab. Walls were being torn apart, as well as fencing panels. And if you just look over here to my right, this red brick building is the mosque that all of this was centered around. The police say that speculation around the identity of the person who has been arrested, the 17-year-old male, on suspicion of murder and attempted murder for the killings of those 3 young girls, aged 9, 7 and 6, Alice, Bibi and Elsie, is what they think caused this. And because of the effects of last night, the police have put in a dispersal order, meaning they've got extra powers to stop and search, and that's in place until at least 8 o'clock tonight.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed. So much to pack in this half hour of the programme. That is our lead story this morning, and such sadness associated with it. We've got the Minister for Housing, because there are big announcements as regards building on the Greenbelt, and we're going to be talking to that Minister right after this short break. Don't go away.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering 135 quid for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on
hi.
the show we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of luxury Highgrove splash, you know, at the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training, and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, you know, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think pretty fairly priced products, and even more so, go and see the gardens. You know, as we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist, and the gardens are fabulous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now we're going to cross over to Westminster Magistrates Court this morning, where the former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards is due to appear after being charged with making indecent images of children.
Yeah, we think he may just be pulling up at court now. We're going to go to our man, Mark White, who's there. Oh, he's not ready yet, but we're talking about...
But he does stand accused, Hugh Edwards, of having had possession of 37 inappropriate photographs on WhatsApp. He's accused of holding 6 of the most serious Category A images. He has just arrived at court. These are the pictures that we're seeing now. Accused of holding 12 Category B pictures and 19 Category C photographs. The former BBC newsreader Hugh Edwards appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court.
He's arriving there on his own, but he has split, it has been announced, from his wife, his TV producer wife. He's 62 years of age, and obviously this is affecting his whole family setup and what's there, his marital setup, and in fact he's got 5 other children as well. But he is not thought to have divorced
Isabel,
his wife Vicky Flint, a mother of 3 sons and his 2 daughters.
Well, the images that he's accused of having in his possession are alleged to be shared via WhatsApp. If Hugh Edwards is found guilty, he does face a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. We'll know that he was one of the BBC's highest profile, highest paid presenters. He resigned officially in April on medical advice. After he made the front pages of the newspapers, he was accused of paying a 17-year-old at the time for indecent images. But at the time, police found no evidence of criminal behaviour. Our reporter, Mark White, is at the court now. Mark.
Yes, we're just entering now Hugh Edwards' Westminster Magistrates Court after what was, well, a classic press bun fight there. He came from the side of the court, actually, just making his way through the side. We expected him actually to pull up in a taxi just right at the front of the court, as they often do, to have the shortest possible walk. But he clearly wanted to make sure that, you know, he wasn't hiding, that he came right along that front, so everybody was there, as you saw, following him in. And there is a very significant number of members of the press here, members of the public. There are protesters here for this event as well. And as you say, he's charged with some 37 offences of sharing and making indecent images. 6 of those of the most serious Category A offences, 12 Category B offences, and 19 Category C offences. If convicted, he could face a maximum penalty of 10 years in jail. That's why it's likely now, when he gets into Westminster Magistrates Court, that this will be probably a brief hearing. They normally are, just to really go through the first preliminary stages of the court process, and then he will be committed for an appearance at the Crown Court, because it is an offence that, if convicted, will carry a jail term of more than a year. Then the Magistrates Court is not in a position to deal with that indictable offence, and it has to go to the Crown Court itself. But Hugh Edwards now here at Westminster Magistrates Court, having been charged with these indecent images offences, images that were, according to prosecutors, shared on WhatsApp. He was arrested in November of last year and charged then in June, or the 26th of June. But we only just learned in the last day or so about this court appearance, with nothing mentioned at all about this from the Crown Prosecution Service or the police until they were asked. But of course, the media are here now. They await the start of these proceedings, probably within the next half an hour.
Appreciate it, Mark. OK, keep us posted. Thank you very much indeed, our man Mark White there at the scene. Hugh Edwards now having left the BBC after a 40-year career, and we're saying that 6 of those images found on his WhatsApp and his phone are the category A type. That is the worst possible images that you could possibly have. So that's the trial that he is facing there.
Yeah, you can see, can't you, the huge media interest outside that courtroom. Interesting, as Mark White was saying, that Hugh Edwards decided to walk through the front of that courtroom, took that long walk from the taxi. Well, today, let's talk about politics, shall we? The government are announcing a new task force to oversee the creation of the biggest house building project since the post-war period.
Now, there's no doubt that house building, we talk about house building in general, people being able to afford to buy or rent, it's in a dismal state. Absolutely, there just are not enough houses for people in this country. And then we get on to the whole separate area of social housing and the provision of that. And I'm not convinced even what the government are talking about now. They're talking about building targets. Are they achievable? Well, let's find out, because joining us now to talk through that and more, Minister for Housing, Matthew Pennycock. Matthew, good morning to you.
Morning.
Matthew, we have a lot to talk about here in a short space of time, but basically the target, the amount of houses you're looking for, what is it, about 250,000 a year, so you're talking about?
Well, we set a very clear target of 1.5 million new homes over Parliament, and that was a very deliberate target rather than an annual one, because the inheritance we're picking up is absolutely dire. We're looking at new housing supply dipping under 200,000 homes a year, partly due to some of the changes the government made late last year, abolishing mandatory housing targets, which we reversed in the changes we made to national planning policy yesterday. So it's a 5-year target. It's stretching. We think it's achievable, partly because of those changes we made yesterday. But with this new towns task force bringing forward appropriate locations for large-scale new communities across the country, over and above that target that we've announced on local authorities across England to bring forward 370,000.
How are you going to build 300,000 houses a year?
Well, as made very clear, it's not an annual target of 300,000 a year. We've put in place the changes yesterday to the national planning policy to ensure we get 370,000 planning permissions through the system. We need to over-permission, if you like, to build. We've got to step up house building over the course of the Parliament, and that involves a number of challenges on the construction front, on planning department capacity, but we've got a comprehensive and thought-through plan to achieve it, partly through the national planning policy reforms yesterday, partly through the large-scale new communities that will come through this task force we've announced today, chaired by Sir Michael Lyons, that will pick these appropriate locations across the country. But we think it is achievable, and we're determined to do it.
I just want to know, what type of houses are we talking about here? I mean, particular, what are you looking for? Are you looking at flats? Are you looking at, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? Are you looking at detached houses? What exactly will we be getting?
Well, Eamonn, you appreciate that's not really for ministers in Whitehall to decide. It's up to local communities through their local plans to determine how best they shape development in their area, what mix of housing they want coming forward, what mix of affordable housing they want coming forward, whether they target that all at genuinely affordable social rented homes, whether it's other types of affordable. That's up to local authorities. What we're saying to them is you all need to do a bit more to reach our 1.5 million new homes target. We've announced those changes to the targets yesterday, but it'll be up to local authorities to meet them. The question we've got to get across is it's about how you meet those targets, not whether you meet them in the first place. And the changes the government made in December last year allowed them to come under their targets.
Matthew, but I would be a bit concerned that we're building, say, a lot of houses for millionaires. I'm from social housing. We ended up buying our house under the Thatcher letting the houses be sold off and whatever. And I really feel bad about that now because, you know, we thought the house would be replaced. It wasn't replaced. We bought it. We benefited from it. It was all done. But social housing, what provision should you not be stepping in and saying there's got to be this amount of social housing?
So we're directing, through the changes we made yesterday, local areas to identify more affordable housing in their tenure mix, to target in particular genuinely affordable social rented housing, because you're absolutely right. What we've seen over the last 14 years of Conservative government is a net loss of 14,000 genuinely affordable social rented homes each and every year. We've got to turn that into a positive number, start building them at scale again, end the overly generous discounts on right to buy that see not, you know, homeowners who've been in their flats, houses for 30, 40 years and want to buy it at a reasonable price, but often private landlords coming in to encourage sales, leasing those homes back to local authorities at taxpayer expense through housing benefit. We've got to change the whole system. But when it comes to some of the changes we're making, and let me take an example, on the changes we announced yesterday to target the release of more grey belt, low quality land within the green belt, we're going to ensure through our golden rules that what comes forward through that release is development that does meet local housing need. Too often we've seen over the last 14 years greenbelt land released haphazardly in a way that doesn't meet local needs. So executive homes, gated communities, local authorities, I think, in terms of changing the conversation about what development means, will accept more development, including grey belt release within the green belt, if it means that affordable homes come forward with the infrastructure, amenities and services that communities need to thrive.
I'm glad you've mentioned infrastructure, because it's all well and good talking about housing and talking about 1.5 million houses, but you need the infrastructure to go with it. You need roads with all that increased traffic flow, you need more GPs, you need more supermarkets. Has all of this been thought about? And more importantly, how's it going to be paid for? We were hearing from Rachel Reeves that there's a £22 billion black hole and that the country's essentially broke.
Well, all of this is not all the case that central government just has to put its hand in its pocket and pay for infrastructure. Local authorities, through their local plans, should have infrastructure strategies. We think we can get more out of developer contributions when planning applications come forward. But this is a challenge we've got to overcome, because one of the main complaints I hear from colleagues, new and old in the House of Commons, is we want the houses, we'll accept the houses, but we must have the infrastructure in place up front to ensure that the communities can thrive. And that's everything, you're right, from GP services to schools and more. And we've got to focus on putting that in place. Some of the changes we made yesterday to the National Planning Policy Framework will help with that. There's more to come. It's an area we've got to bear down on, because I think we've got to change the conversation. I've said this repeatedly over the course of the election campaign and since. There is a small minority of people across the country who will not accept development of any kind in their area. We've got to be very clear in taking those people on. There's a far larger group of people that objects to development because it doesn't have that infrastructure in place, or it's bad development, speculative development, low quality, badly designed. So we've got to do better and change the conversation and make development more acceptable in more places to solve that housing crisis and meet our 1.5 million new homes target.
Well, Matthew Pennycock, you sound very passionate about it. We wish you well. We hope you can achieve that target and hopefully more. Keep us posted.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Britain's Newsroom's coming up at 9:30. Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner are here to tell us all about it. Morning, you two.
Very good morning. Can I just say about these ministers, they drive me nuts. Well, let's talk about local people decide. They're going to make some local areas take 7 times more houses than before. And the government is saying if they don't like it, they're going to change the rules to force them to do it. So central government is going to dictate to local areas.
The only thing I'd say to you, Andrew, is the system's broken.
It is.
Yeah, and it's going to take someone to take it by the scruff of the neck.
But don't try and tell us that local people have much say in it, because it's going to be dictated by Angela Rayner.
Let me ask you, my
central.
And I don't know the answer to this. Are you from a council house?
I am.
Yeah, and so am I.
My mum and dad didn't buy it, though.
They didn't?
No, sadly.
That's a whole other story for another day.
I wanted to. I encouraged
you.
We've now
run out of time. See us from 9:30. Right. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for watching.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another hot day today, but as the humidity rises, so does the thunderstorm risk across southern areas. But for most of us, it's going to be a dry, warm and sunny day. I think the sunshine will be more widely felt across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland into this afternoon. There will still be some hazier sunshine here and there, but I think for most of us, a dry and warm day. But across the south coast, notice these showers starting to edge ever closer to the south coast. There is some uncertainty in whether we'll see any impacts from that, but there is a warning in force. Now, away from that thunderstorm risk, temperatures still climbing into the high 20s, the low 30s still possible. We could see 32 degrees again today, but into this evening it will stay quite warm, even across parts of Scotland where it has been a bit of a cooler week so far. It's eastern areas of Scotland that will be warmest. In the west, with still a little bit more in the way of cloud around, temperatures in the mid-teens here this evening. To Northern Ireland, potentially some hazy sunshine, some clouds still lingering across parts of Wales, but as I said, it's across the south coast where temperatures are the highest, still in the mid to high 20s to end this evening, where the humidity is rising and that thunderstorm risk does increase. So that's where the weather warnings in force across southeastern areas of England through this afternoon and into the evening. But overnight, that risk becomes more widespread across parts of England and Wales. Parts of South Wales and then northeastern England could see some heavy downpours, large hail and lightning as well overnight. And temperatures will be high. It's going to be a warm and potentially quite muggy night tonight quite widely. So a warm start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine across the north and west, but in the east still a risk of some very heavy downpours. The continued risk of thunderstorms and hail into Thursday afternoon as well. As that area clears away to the east, it's from the west we start to see more in the way of showers, thunderstorms as well, and it will be another very warm and humid